Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Cindy, please call the roll of the board.
Let's see, we're waiting on Curator Burnsick, Curator Chapman,
Here.
Curator Graham,
Here.
Curator Hobrock,
Here.
Curator Lehman,
Here.
Curator Snowden,
Here.
Curator Stillman,
Here.
Curator Winokur,
Here.
Curator Williams.
Here.
Okay, perfect. And then we also have Student Representative Williams joining us this morning as well.
Good morning.
All right, we have a quorum.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's board meeting. As a reminder and courtesy to everyone on the call, please mute your devices when not speaking. Okay, so I'll repeat that. Please mute your devices when not speaking. Okay, so we'll start off today we'll move into our general business, and we have the chair's report. So I will start off the meeting with the board chair's report. Okay, are my slides up and ready to go? All right.
There you go.
Okay, good morning, and thank you all for joining us for the first board meeting of 2021. I hope the year has been off to a great start for each of you. Before we get started, I want to share how our meetings will run this year as a reminder to our board members and leaders, and also as an update to others tuning in. We have slightly shifted the structure of our board meeting agendas. With the exception of the Health Affairs Committee, we will no longer hold separate committee meetings the week before the full board meeting. For efficiency's sake, we will instead hold committee meetings during the full board meeting. We hope this provides all of our constituents with the proper context for all committee business. I thank all of you for your patience as we make this change starting with today's meeting. Okay, now let's get started. Thank you, President Choi and the Mizzou leadership team for serving as host for this meeting. Traditionally, we would hold the February meeting in Columbia rather than virtually. I think we all look forward to when we can meet again in person, hopefully soon. During her time as chair last year, Curator Brunsick provided momentum that I'm excited to continue. She reminded us all of how important our mission critical work is to the state of Missouri. She reminded us all just how important this mission critical work is. And despite challenges we faced, we must not accept mediocrity, but rather push ahead and achieve excellence towards our strategic endeavors. Despite the obvious challenges, we celebrate progress on numerous successes in 2020, and I look forward to celebrating more in 2021. To start, I'd like to recognize the faculty members from Mizzou who have recently been designated as Curators Distinguished Professors. Professor Frank Bowman has an extensive work history, which includes special counsel to the U.S. Sentencing Commission in Washington, D.C., Deputy Chief of the Southern Criminal Division for the Southern District of Florida, and served as an academic advisor to the Criminal Law Committee of the United States Judicial Conference. Professor Bowman joined the faculty in 2005 from the Indiana University School of Law in Indianapolis, where he served as the Dale Palmer Professor of Law. Congratulations, Professor Bowman, for being named a Curator's Distinguished Professor. Dr. Noah Harringman teaches courses on British Romanticism, literature and science, poetic genres, and critical theory. He has several publications, including multiple books, essays, journals, numerous book chapters, and an edited volume. His work has been supported by year-long fellowships from the Huntington Library and from the National Humanities Center. Congratulations, Dr. Harringman, for being named as a Curator's Distinguished Professor. Dr. Tim Lewis has been involved in special education for 35 years and has taught students with emotional and behavioral disorders in high school, elementary, and self-contained psychiatric settings. During his 28-year career in higher education, Dr. Lewis has served multiple terms as department chair and associate dean for research. Dr. Lewis worked directly with school teams around the world, secured over $80 million in grants to support his research and demonstration efforts, and is a frequent contributor to the professional literature examining various aspects of positive behavior support. Congratulations, Dr. Lewis, for being named a Curator's Distinguished Professor. Dr. Anand Prahlad is a poet, creative fiction writer, editor, scholar, songwriter, and a musician. He has published extensively on topics in African American and Caribbean folklore. Notably, Prahlad's memoir, The Secret Life of Black Aspie, won the Permafrost Book Prize in nonfiction. Dr. Prahlad has also edited 2 encyclopedias and is also working on a second book of creative nonfiction called Canaan's Hill. Congratulations, Dr. Prahlad, for being named a Curators Distinguished Teaching Professor. Dr. Yuwen Zhang has made many contributions to the research of multi-phase heat transfer and flow, including several publications. His dedication to research excellence has been recognized by organizations like the American Society of Mechanical Engineers and the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. Congratulations, Dr. Zhang, for being named a Curators Distinguished Professor. I always enjoy recognizing our faculty members who contribute to our important teaching mission and the success of our students. Similarly, it is so important that we also recognize those who contribute so greatly to our research mission. For my chair reports this year, I plan to share highlights of outstanding faculty members from each university who are pushing the research envelope and making advances that move the needle for our peer metrics, whether that's for AAU or other rankings that contribute to our external funding, and the national reputations of our 4 universities. These individuals who drive our progress set a tone for the culture of excellence we strive for in every part of our academic enterprise. Please join me in learning more about them. Dr. Lane M. Young-Walker, Associate Dean for Student Programs and Chair of the Department of Psychiatry at the MU School of Medicine, has secured more than $23 million in grants to support research in early child mental health, access to mental health treatment, anxiety disorders, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Most recently, Dr. Young-Walker has been featured on several news programs providing her expertise on how to talk to children about COVID-19. To support next-gen precision health efforts, Dr. Young-Walker has been instrumental in bringing other star researchers to the university. From UMKC, I want to recognize Dr. Kuhn Chang. Dr. Chang's research spans from discovering novel therapies for Alzheimer's and liver diseases to developing targeted drug delivery systems to improve outcomes for cancer therapies. His research has received support from the Department of Defense, the National Institutes of Health, and the American Cancer Society and the American Association of Pharmaceutical Sciences. He continues to be nationally and internationally recognized for his contributions to his science, and we are fortunate to have him at UMKC. Dr. Laura Bartlett, the Robert V. Wolf Associate Professor of Metallurgical Engineering at Missouri S&T, recently received a $20 million in Department of Defense funding to develop a new lightweight, ultra-strong steel for the military. The agreement will also give Missouri S&T students an opportunity to learn commercial scale steel processing at the Kent D. Peasley Steel Manufacturing Research Center on campus. Large-scale processing opportunities will give them valuable experience while at S&T. Excuse me. This work will also benefit other branches of the military, as well as steel producers, the automotive industry, and infrastructure. And lastly, from UMSL, Dr. Beth Hubner, professor in the Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice. Dr. Hubner's research focuses on the collateral consequences of incarceration, racial and gender disparities in the criminal justice system, and public policy. Much of Hubner's work has been focused on examining incarceration in the city of St. Louis and St. Louis County. For several years, she has been directing research on how to reduce the jail population in St. Louis County with $4.5 million in support from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. Dr. Hubner is also part of a system-wide collaborative effort with MU and UMKC to support corrections research in Missouri. As you can see, the depth and breadth of research and creative works being done at our universities is impressive. Recognizing these researchers is the least I can do to show the board's support and appreciation for how each one of them uniquely delivers upon our mission and makes a meaningful difference in the world. I look forward to using each meeting to share a few highlights from some of our top performers. With that, I'll conclude my report so we can jump into the business of the day. All right. So with that, President Choi, I will turn it over to you for your president's report.
Thank you very much, Chair Chapman, and thank you for recognizing our outstanding faculty. Faculty members who perform at the highest level for research, teaching, and engagement are essential for public research universities. So I look forward to continuing the discussions with the board of promoting and investing in the faculty that will create the type of excellence that we need in all 4 universities. So with that, let me provide a report. And I'll first start by sharing how much appreciation I have, and so many of us who are part of the leadership team, for the faculty, staff, and students. Whether it is creating a welcoming environment to welcome international students during a pandemic, or treating dogs with cancer so they can go back to nurturing their families, or creating a new school of medicine in St. Joseph, Missouri to meet the rural healthcare needs. Our faculty, staff, and students are delivering even during a pandemic, and we're so proud of them. In terms of our academic enterprise, in the fall, we saw a very large increase in the number of student interest in in-person classes that featured the face-to-face component. So in the spring, we worked very hard, the leaders at all 4 universities working with the faculty to ensure that we have a large percentage of our courses that have the face-to-face component. Whether it's a laboratory like the one you see below at UMKC, or the special laboratory for engineering at Missouri S&T, students want that experience and faculty members want to provide that experience. When combined with the high quality online programs that we offer, we really do believe it's an unmatched way to deliver education to students. But the residential experiences at all 4 universities are not limited to the classroom or the laboratory. Students come because of the camaraderie opportunities when they are working out or attending a football game or a basketball game, or just enjoying some time on the quad. At all 4 campuses, students shared with us that they want to be in person, and our faculty members and staff have responded by providing the opportunities for that experience. Now, continuing the recognition that you provided, Chair Chapman, I want to share recognition of high quality researchers at all 4 universities. The first is Dr. Andy Zapata with co-PI Dr. Candace Kuby from the School of Education. And through the funding from MODESI and the U.S. Department of Education, they are developing new ways to increase literacy throughout the state of Missouri. As many of us know, literacy increases can lead to greater student success while they're in K through 12, as well as greater success when they attend college. Dr. Jeanette Berkeley-Padden is a faculty member at UMKC who's doing such important work in the community that uses research that supports next gen, as well as addressing the very important health disparities that exist in many parts of our state. And this is funding that is provided by NIH, and she uses that funding to provide the links that the community needs and the safeguards, as well as useful information that the residents in different parts of the state can use to make better informed decisions about the testing methodology, as well as the vaccine. At Missouri S&T, a group of researchers working with partners from Ameren as well as LG Chemical are developing one of the first very rapid charging system for electric vehicles. And many of us know that even with the most advanced chargers these days, it takes about half an hour to an hour to charge up, let's say, a Tesla or a Honda Clarity. But with this technology, within the time that normally takes a driver to fill up a gas tank, one can recharge the vehicle so that they can use that throughout the state or beyond. Very exciting research. Last but not least, Dr. Shay Kirkhoff and their co-PI, Dr. Nancy Singer, are also working on literacy and focusing on the 40 districts that surround St. Louis. And one of the important work that she is doing here is to reduce the disparities that are caused by social economic differences. And this project, like the first project that I discussed, will create that student success principles in K through 12 that will carry on through the student's career in college. An update on Next Gen Precision Health. I want to commend Dr. Dave Robertson, as well as Mr. Ken Brooks and the members of the MER team, as well as the senior leaders that developed a partnership with AAA. AAA is a company that is owned by Novartis. And with AAA, our researchers helped to develop the isotope lutetium-177 that is the central component of the pancreatic cancer drug Lutathera. As you see there, the radionuclide can only be manufactured with the technology that we have at MER. We're the only university in the world that can do this, and we are now the only producer of this material for that drug in North America. Our goal with AAA is to expand the capacity of creating new types of isotopes that can treat different types of cancer. And our ultimate goal is to work on breast cancer, prostate cancer, and eventually lung cancer. This type of partnership will create the research and development opportunities, create the revenues that we can invest in other parts of the university in strategic areas, create new companies in the region, and create the economic development that will fuel the development in this part of the state. So next up are research awards related to NextGen that support NextGen. These are two projects by faculty members. One is in, I believe, Dr. Gerald Skyberg is in the College of Vet Medicine, and he has taken a precision health approach to better understand how to develop vaccines more effectively. And in the first project, Dr. Guanghong Jia, working with researchers at both MU Healthcare as well as the VA hospital, is using precision health approaches to better understand how nutrition can help improve a person's ability to overcome diseases such as type 2 diabetes. Next up, student success. And in the most recent US News and World Report rankings for online programs, all 4 universities did very well. And as you can see, I've highlighted those categories that also serve veterans. And we're very proud that all 4 universities have a strong focus in supporting veterans who want to continue their education after serving the country. And as you can see from this list and the contributing factors, one of the important things that Matt Gunkel and his Missouri online team, working closely with the provost at all 4 universities, was to identify the correct metrics to be reported to US News so that we are accurately evaluated. And so we're very proud of this effort. We think there is more room for growth, but the rankings demonstrate that we are being recognized for quality, and that will help drive more enrollment and help drive revenue that we will then invest in critical areas, critical priorities to achieve excellence at the university. In terms of the admissions update, I'll give you a chance to read through the numbers while I have a drink of water. At Mizzou, if you look at the freshman applications, there is a slight decrease of about 1,100 students. At the other universities, with the exception of UMKC, there's also been a slight decrease. But this is a dramatic increase from where the numbers stood 3 months ago. So a lot of hard work from enrollment managers and the universities to increase the number of applications. This year, because of the pandemic, uncertainty about the future, meaning there are some students around the country that are questioning whether universities will open face-to-face. As you may know, some universities announced that they would open face-to-face in the fall of 2020, but ended up quickly reverting to remote learning. And in addition to that, there's the financial challenges that many families are facing, as well as ACT and SAT tests not being made available in some parts of the country. So the fact that we are where we are in terms of applications, I'm really, really proud. But we have a challenge to exceed the numbers that we have last year. And we are working very closely with all of the enrollment managers to ensure that the acceptances also are at the level, at least where they were last year. So there's some more work to do, but I have a lot of confidence in the team. Let's talk about faculty, staff, and student achievements. And as you can see from here, whether it is a student in journalism that received the 75th Annual College Photographer of the Year Award, or Ms. Callan Houghton, who's an associate director at UMKC, who helped to write a proposal for $3.8 million for her the center in which she works in, the Recovery Center of Excellence at UMKC. And our faculty members receive awards that are national and regional awards that help contribute to the reputation of the university and is another step to achieving greater levels of excellence that we all seek. And as you know, during meetings in which the Board of Curator meeting is hosted by an institution, we make the announcements of presidential awardees in various categories, whether it's for community engagement, sustained career excellence, or inter-campus collaboration. And these are the awardees for Mizzou. And we're very proud of them. They go above and beyond the work that they do in the research lab, work that they do in the classroom, and what they do in the community to bring greater impact for the body of work that we do at our university. In terms of our priorities, the state priorities are to request for the system $428 million for the core and $10 million for next gen to be placed into the core. The governor's budget has $420 million for the system in the core, and we very much appreciate it. And he has placed $3 million for next gen, but as a line item. But to give you some context, last year the governor placed $1 million, but eventually he signed the bill that placed $10 million in support for next gen. So we're confident that we will be able to get the $10 million for next gen. Now, the reason that I put that graph on the right-hand side is that there are many in the state that point to the University of Missouri as receiving the largest amount of state funding for universities. And that is true. That is true. But there are elements to our enterprise that we are mandated to do. For example, we are the only universities, we are the only university system that has a mandate for research, that has a mandate for extension throughout the state, in addition to Lincoln University, and to offer professional degrees. We educate over 200 medical doctors each year. Many of them stay in the state, and many of them serve rural communities. We educate more than 2,200 engineers. We educate more than 100 vet med doctors each year. These are programs that only we are mandated to do, and they are expensive programs. So if we were to carve out those particular mandated programs and then divide by the number of students, as you can see, the UM system comes in at less than $4,000. Not only is it the lowest in the state, it is one of the lowest in the United States. But it's so critically important that as we seek to increase our commitment to achieve excellence, that the investment from the state is needed. And that is why we are asking for $428 million and $10 million for next gen. So how are we going to focus on achieving excellence? Well, during the past several years, we were aligned to the board objective and expectations to have financial stability to achieve our critical mission. And in order for us to now manage the uncertainties of the pandemic, the financial challenges that exist in the future, we have to be very careful, and we have to be able to pivot quickly. And we also have to grow revenue through sources that we may not have relied upon in the past. We have to cut expenses from programs that don't produce the excellence that we seek, or those programs that are not central to our mission. So the question that we must entertain is that if we were to start a university from scratch right now, what are the core elements that support our mission? And how do we support those? Instead of asking the question or asking the question of why we need to divest from programs, we should be asking the question, why should we continue to invest in those programs if they are not central to our mission? And there will be consolidation of units. There will also be expectations that faculty, staff will all contribute to their capacity. So let me close by sharing with you that Dr. Colin Potts has accepted the position of Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at Missouri S&T. And he joins Chancellor Degani and the senior leadership team from Georgia Tech, where he served for many years as a distinguished faculty and administrator. So we will welcome him on June 1st. But as he is leaving, there are also transition of sharing our goodbyes. And I want to thank Dr. Mark McIntosh, who served both at the system level and at Mizzou for 40 years of distinguished service to the university. And with that, let's congratulate Dr. Colin Potts and also wish Dr. Mark McIntosh the very best in his retirement.
Okay, thank you, President Choi, for that report. Are there any questions from the board on Dr. Choi's report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just a brief question, and I don't have it in front of me, but Dr. Choi, you talked about the hybrid and in-person, and I can't speak for the administration or any other curator, but I've heard two things from parents that are a concern. Is one, paying full freight for online, and I believe in online, but I've heard that as a concern. But two, I have heard the parents saying they wanted their student to go in Missouri, and this is not just Mizzou, in Missouri, but other schools seem to be more successful in returning to in-person. Now, part of this may be the town. I haven't looked at everybody. College Station may be a different organism dealing with than Columbia, but they are saying that they have 75% of their students receiving at least 2 in-person classes. And then you have Gainesville. And of course, the other side of this is Gainesville and University of Florida are having an uprising among their faculty. So it's not an easy equation. But I would like to talk about whether you or other curators are hearing this concern. How much is this impacting our enrollment vis-a-vis other schools? Because we have enrollment, finances, and tuition all coming at us. And this does seem to be a concern in all of those areas.
Right. So let me answer that question in this manner. I've heard some of those concerns too from parents who would contact me, and the parents would be upset that their son or daughter are enrolled in mostly online classes. And what I do is when I receive that information, I send it directly to the provost, as well as Jim Spain, the vice provost. And when they look at the situation, more times than not, the students themselves choose the online component of the face-to-face class. And so many ways the students may be making that choice themselves, even though both modalities are made available to the student. Now, having said that, there are ways that we're going to be introducing more face-to-face classes for the fall. And we made a deliberate effort to make sure that there were more face-to-face classes in the spring term this year. So we offered more face-to-face classes, but students also decided to choose the online component. And that is a situation that we're in. But there's no question about it. Universities that demonstrate that they're going to have more face-to-face component will do better in terms of enrollment for the fall.
Do we know this number? And I'll drop this real quickly because I sure don't want to mess up, Mr. Chairman, your first the timeline on your first meeting. But for instance, A&M is actively bragging and marketing that more than 75% of their students have 2 or more in-person classes. Do we know our numbers on that? And I don't even know if A&M's numbers are right because it's a marketing number. But
well, I love Texas. You know, they talk big in Texas. I wonder how much of it is hat and how much of it is cattle. So we will find out. We will find out from them. We'll do our comparisons and determine what that comparison is. But I have to say that our faculty members have really stepped up. And because they realize that students do want to have that in-person, face-to-face component as well as the online. And so we've not had the situation that we've read about at some places like Iowa or Florida.
Florida's having an uprising among faculty. Anyway, that's enough. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to follow up on David's comment and ask a follow-up question if I could. What is the limiting factor on whether or not we can be face-to-face or have to be online? Is it personnel? Is it space? You know, what's holding us back? Help me out. Help me understand that.
So currently we have a space use regulation in terms of how many individuals can safely be in a room with social distancing. So space is a limiting factor. In some cases, we may have faculty members who have underlying health conditions, and they make a request that is then reviewed and approved by the department chair. So it's a combination of both. So for example, we may have had a large lecture of 300 to 400 students for an introductory survey course in Jesse Auditorium. But the highest number of students that we can sit in that seat, in that space, is about 100 because of the social distancing requirements. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, great questions. Any more questions for President Choi? Okay, hearing none, we'll keep things moving. I'll turn it over to our student representative Williams for his report.
Thank you, Chairman Chapman and President Choi. So kind of echoing what Curator Chapman and President Choi have already discussed this morning, it was my goal to highlight some students that are also involved in research going on at each of the individual campuses and also projects in the community. So we'll go ahead and start off with an update on Intercampus Student Council first. Next slide, please. So as many of you know, this is a group comprised of student leaders from the 4 individual universities and also the Associated Students of Missouri. And this group meets together about monthly, and we discuss issues and topics that are going on around the state, but also on our individual campuses. So currently we're full steam ahead on planning our Student Leader Summit with students from not just the system, but student leaders from around the entire state to come together and have a discussion over Zoom about issues that are facing students across the entire state, and also just to kind of get to know each other better and form those bonds between campuses and universities. Next slide, please. So here at Mizzou in Columbia, we have students that are just killing it on the research front. So first, they're watering the soil. You have Yejin Yi, who's a postdoctoral fellow in the biochemistry lab here. And by using the gene editing tool CRISPR, he's been able, and his colleagues have been able to eliminate and isolate genes that regulate fatty acid production in foliage. So by doing this, they've identified a method to produce a higher quantity at a lower cost, possibly, of vegetable oil. And these results have been recently published in the journal Nature Communications and have led to the opportunity to more research and possible further publication. So just a great example of a student really getting hands-on and learning, but also contributing to research in a positive manner. Also there on the right, you have Waylon Wu, who's an engineering student here at Mizzou, who took home the top prize at the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineer 2020 Symposium. And what's even more impressive about this is that Wu was the only student to make the finalists of this prestigious international competition. So of all the submissions, our own Waylon from Mizzou was the only student to make the to make the finals and to win it. So Waylon took home a $7,000 prize in pursuit of his PhD in electrical engineering, and now has the opportunity to work with professors and other people around the country to form a joint publication and also participate in further research. So hopefully we'll have an update on the further research by both of these students throughout the year. Next slide, please. At Missouri S&T, we also have students engaging in great research and also a little fun as well. So Julian Kazaki, a PhD student in material science, which is obviously a big priority in Rolla and engineering, recently earned the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Science Graduate Student Research Award. And this is an incredibly prestigious, again, a national award that recognizes outstanding academic accomplishments, so the past, the merit of the students' current research projects, so kind of what they're working on now, but also the students' potential to advance in their graduate studies. So this is another good example of someone who's already killed it, is continuing to kill it, and looking forward to see what they're able to do over the course of the next year and future. And then in addition, this is kind of hot off the press recently this week, a team of seven S&T students won a grant through NASA's Big Idea Challenge to develop a way to remove lunar dust from power producing solar cells. So later this month, that team will learn how much funding they'll be granted from NASA to further develop this, but it's up to $180,000. And what I really love about this story is it's a team of 7 students from diverse backgrounds, all the way from undergraduate students ranging the gambit to PhD students. So it just goes to show that, with the right people on our campuses and the right mentors and professors and advisors, that from the moment you step on campus, you can be a part of a team that is doing some really valuable research, not just for the state and for our institutions, but also the broader country. And I think that's summed up by the quote from the director of technology with NASA's space technology mission there on your screen. Also in Rolla, a kind of more fun story, we have a Thomas Trey Bashirs III, who's a sophomore from Kansas City, took home a $100,000 scholarship presented by Dr. Pepper on the popular YouTube channel Dude Perfect. So I know students are big into Dude Perfect, and this video has already racked up over 1 million views. And he took part in a kind of head-to-head trivia competition. And obviously, the second place student still had a pretty good day, but Trey took home the grand prize and the $100,000 scholarship. So congratulations to Trey, and just always good to have some bright stories in these tough times. Next slide, please. And then also at UMSL, we have students engaged in the community through projects, and then also through your more kind of traditional research means. So Katie Huggard and the rest of her classmates, and a couple of them are pictured there on the left, through their communications 4100 course, identified a need and executed a plan to address a problem. So really they were hands-on in finding something in their community that needed to be addressed, going through the steps to address it, and then creating a finished project. So through working with Build-A-Bear Foundation, they were able to secure a donation of over 680 furry friends and deliver them to Haven House St. Louis, a hospitality house that provides housing to out-of-town, out-of-state relatives as they're visiting patients throughout the St. Louis area. And through this, they're able to deliver the furry friends to a hotel, and that hotel distributed them to family members as they checked in, trying to provide a little comfort during their time of pain and discomfort. So a great story. Also on the right, we have Professor of Nursing Ann Fish and a PhD student, Fawn Lee, who've been doing incredible work to better understand the early days and working conditions throughout a specific province in China that healthcare workers faced in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. And through interviews with over 20 frontline workers in China, they've been able to create a journal and a story, an article, and are currently seeking publication. But what's great about this story is that Fawn, our PhD student, served as the chief kind of cultural ambassador and also the chief translator as the person with the most language experience and know-how. So without this gifted PhD student, this research doesn't really get off the ground and doesn't have the legs that it currently has. Next slide, please. And then finally, in Kansas City at UMKC, the picture on the right illustrates during flu season, students administered over 5,500 flu vaccines, and that's our very own Chancellor Agrawal receiving his from a pharmacy student. But currently, students and pharmacists and the medical school are working on how they can roll out and gear up the same kind of effort, and the plan's already kind of working their way through to have a similar response as we disperse the COVID vaccine into our community. And finally, I want to close with the story of Emily Weber on the left. And Emily represents some of the best attributes that our system and university has to offer. After tragically losing both parents at an early age due to medical tragedies, Emily was drawn to the medical field. And since arriving at UMKC as an undergraduate student, she's wasted little time in making her impact known, not just on campus, but in the community. She founded a peer-to-peer kind of mentoring service with pre-med undergraduate students that her goal was to get 20 students the first semester. She's currently at she's definitely making the most of her time as a RU and also killing it in the classroom as her hard work has culminated in a recent publication as a lead author, no less, in Chromosoma, which is a research magazine. And her work focuses on how genetic backgrounds impact the breakdown of certain cells. So this is definitely a significant achievement for an undergraduate student. And Scott Hawley of the Stowers Institute himself said over the years he's recommended over 500 students in the last 45 to 50 years, and she is without a doubt in the top 10. So just a great example of how our universities continue to attract top students and how those students, when they get on campus and get matched up with the right people, are able to impact our campuses, our cities, but most importantly, our state and region. So with that, on the next slide, I'd open it up to any questions, but definitely whether it be through Build-A-Bears on the bottom right, the lunar dust, or Emily, or any of the other great stories that we hear about, our students and our campuses are definitely making a difference. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Remington. Are there any questions?
Daryl, can I ask a question? Remington, you mentioned the young man at S&T, Thomas Brashears, who got a $100,000 scholarship. And I just wanted to say I'm a proud uncle of that young man. He's the daughter of my sister. I mean, he's the son of my sister. So I just wanted to give him a shout out.
Are you one of the million views, Curator Snowden?
Am I what?
One of the million people that have viewed the video online?
I have not, but I know about it, and he's a bright young man.
Sounds like it'll be 1,000,001 tomorrow. So I'll send you the link.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Phil. Any other questions for Remington? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much, Remington, for that report.
Thank you.
All right, our next item of business is to approve the Board Executive Committee and Standing Committee appointments for this year. May I have a motion and a second from the board to approve these appointments?
I move approval of the proposed executive committee members and as well the members of the standing committees.
I second.
All right, any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Do we have any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. All right, next we have the consent agenda. Are there any questions from the board for any of the consent agenda items? Is there anything anyone wants to remove or discuss further? Okay, hearing none, may I have a motion and a second from the board to approve the consent agenda as presented in your materials?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay, do we have any discussion from the board? Any questions? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Do we have any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, Curator Williams, I will now turn it over to you for the Governance, Compensation, and Human Resources Committee meeting.
Well, thank you very much, Curator Chapman. As you guys will recall, last year, we decided that each individual committee would have a charter and that we would review it annually. I'm proud to report that we did that and that the charters were reviewed with both the committee members, their executive representative, and others to make sure that those charters were in line with what we intended to do as our focus for 2021. I'm also proud to say that those charters remained pretty much unchanged, except for a few changes that I'll go over briefly. First, the Governors Committee and the Academic Affairs Committee made a slight change to their charter. And what those committees did is they added a statement regarding the oversight of the university's diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And those materials or those changes are in your materials. Does anyone have any questions about those changes or additions? The other charter that was tweaked a little bit was the Health Affairs Committee. And they offered a friendly amendment that added, this isn't in your material, so I'm going to read it to you. It was in their scope section, and it just added a line that says specific projects that enable meaningful collaboration among universities. And I believe Curator Steelman is going to make just a brief statement as to why they thought that change was necessary.
Thank you, Michael. This was after quite a bit of discussion and went through a variety of iterations, both more detailed and less detailed. This is something that Marcy Graham has dealt with for a year. Rick Barron, I believe, approves of this change. In fact, Rick, feel free to speak up. I think you might even, as the committee evolves, want to go further. But this is because the collaboration between the health at Mizzou and health being pharmacy, medical school at UMKC, plus Gary Forsey's given a very nice gift that has to be a collaboration for next gen. I'll answer any questions. I'll let Rick and Marcy say anything they want to. This was a compromise with Moon, Rick, everyone involved, which is just a baby step towards a committee that might or might not determine to oversee all of healthcare, I will tell you, I personally didn't want to take that on this year. I think Jonathan and Rick and Moon didn't want to make it a full extension, but to allow us to at least try to maintain some oversight over collaborative efforts between MU Health and Kansas City in particular, where we've got to get more involved with some of those foundations. Rick or Marcy, do you want to add anything there?
No, I think you've stated it correctly. I do think that over the coming year or two, we'll need to continue to look at the charter for the committee and to perhaps even tweak it further as we go along. And I know that that's a process that others have discussed.
Rick, do you have anything to add there? Rick, you're on mute. I can't hear you.
I didn't have anything to add except that it's true that I'm working very closely with a lot of our UMKC partners, with Chancellor Agarwal and his team, and it's all going very well. So we are seeing more activity and collaboration between healthcare on this campus and in Kansas City.
One more thing, and obviously this is to drive research, which of course
Right.
The chairman is making a high priority. Daryl, you can speak to that, maybe the priority of his year.
That's correct, David.
Are there any questions for the Healthcare and Affairs Committee with regard to this addition to their charter? Hearing none, I would like to ask for a motion and a second from the committee for the approval of the board standing committee chair charters as reviewed by the committee chairs and executive liaisons, and that have been attached in your meeting and that are attached in your materials, other than the one line that I've read to you.
And as amended, right? Is that the motion? Yes. Yeah,
yes.
So moved.
Second.
All in.
Wait, we need either Jeff Lehman or Julia to second.
I'll second that.
Okay. As for the committee, we have a motion and a second. And I think, Cindy, now we need to vote as a committee.
Yes.
Yes.
And you can do a voice vote, it's fine.
Okay. All those in favor of the changes to the committee charters, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those committee members that are opposed, please say nay. Are there any extension? Is anyone holding out? Cindy, I believe it is unanimous from the committee.
All right, thank you. You can go ahead and make a motion to the chair.
I will now make a motion to the chair that you approve the amendments to the committee charters.
Okay, thank you, Michael. A motion has been made for the annual approval of the board standing committee charters. Do I have a second from the board?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Do we have any abstentions? The motion carries. All right, thank you, Curator Williams. Curator Hoberock, I will turn it over to you for the Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you, Chairman Chapman. I see we're 6 minutes behind on schedule. I will do my best to make up that 6 minutes. So I will try to get through this as quickly as possible. I would like to first deal on our agenda. We have one action item or one information item, 4 action items. The information item is the federal budget stabilization funds for maintenance that we received from the governor, and I would ask Ryan Rapp to give us an overview of that.
Thank you, Curator Hoberock. In your materials, there was information regarding this and the plans developed by each campus for the $36.9 million in maintenance and repair funding that was released. This was appropriated in the budget as part of the federal stabilization funds. The impact to our budget would be that it would have increased our overall revenues by $36.9 million, and we would expect a corresponding increase in non-personnel spend, so in supply, service, and other of $36.9 million. Now expense increase could be less if some of this carries over into FY22 or some of that is capitalized. Specifically, we received 21 million for MU and system. 6.9 million was received for UMKC. 4.7 million was received for S&T, and 5.2 was provided to UMSL. To give you a little idea on the state's process, early in December, the governor's office, along with MDHE, indicated there was the potential release of some operations funding. Then on December 7th, the Department of Higher Education provided us with a template and guidance that the funding should address maintenance and repair needs and provide economic stimulus in the near term. We had to then provide our proposed projects to the Department of Higher Education by December 31st. In January, we were notified by the Department of Higher Education that our plans were approved. The funding will be released in 6 monthly installments, January through June of 2021. We've been given guidance that the project should be completed as quickly as feasible. And then we have reporting on the project status is required until each individual project is completed. As we went through our process, each campus came up with their priority projects. They looked for maintenance and repair projects already designed and in place that hadn't possibly been placed on hold because of the pandemic, or projects that we've already completed studies and the design could quickly be completed. We looked at life and safety projects. So you see some fire alarm systems, laboratory ventilation systems, some envelope projects that would eliminate water infiltration, such as roofs, tuck pointing, windows. We also then looked at system replacements for buildings, infrastructure needs related to utilities, ADA concerns, and then demolition to reduce facilities needs and reduce operational cost. And this process was conducted at each university, and then those lists were submitted to MDHE and approved. And so we are starting to move forward with some of those. But in closing, I want to express our thanks to Governor Parson for his support for this maintenance and repair work that is desperately needed on our 4 universities, and then would also like to open it up for any questions the Finance Committee might have in regards to the projects that were submitted.
Are there any questions from the Finance Committee members to Mr. Rapp? Hearing none, we will move on. I need to correct myself. We have 5 action items, not 4. I cannot count this morning. I blame that on Curator Lehman, but that'll be a different story. First action item is to amend the collective approval for the collective rules and regulations 14-013 investment policy, pool policy and endowment pool. I'd like to call on Tom Richards, who will provide you an overview of the changes. Tom?
Good morning. Thank you. Jeff McLean from Veris, our investment consultant, is also on the Zoom in case there are any questions. If I could get the slides, thank you. Just that first summary slide thank you. Wanted to give a really quick investment update. We didn't have this data when the slides were produced for the meeting, but the year-end 2020 results for both retirement and endowment, we ended up for the year around a 15% return. And on a fiscal year-to-date basis, so the first 6 months of the fiscal year through the end of December, both of those were right around 10%. You'll be getting a more detailed report shortly on that, but I wanted to mention that. The summary of the endowment pool carries on with similar themes that were introduced when we talked about the retirement plan late last fall. In essence, we want to keep the focus on balance and diversification as much as we can. That's because of the return environment, the economic environment, largely through COVID, through the actions of the Fed forcing rates down to 0 for the foreseeable future. It causes us to make some compromise in our balance due to sort of that need and desire for balance versus the need for return. So the largest change here, similar to the retirement plan, will be a reduced allocation to US TIPS, Treasury, inflation protected securities, and US Treasuries, and redeploying that primarily into the private markets and also our risk balanced strategy allocation. This sort of continues the theme, and one of the reasons we broke the two portfolios up and presenting them is the risk characteristics of the endowment versus the retirement plan are really beginning to diverge, and we think that the asset allocation should reflect that, both in terms of what we're presenting now and then as we go forward into the future. Next slide, please. So this is a summary of the proposed changes. So the highlights, as I mentioned, you'll see sovereign bonds down from 14 to 8, TIPS down from 15 to 10, with corresponding increases in more of the private market vehicles. Private equity is an example, going from 10 to 15, private debt from 3 to 7, and private real estate from 8 to 10. Couple different points. One, I think a fair question would be with sovereign bonds and inflation-linked bonds, given the return, why maintain that at all? That was part of the forced compromise in terms of that return balance. So we reduced the exposure, but we think it's important to keep it in the portfolio because it is diversifying. It also helps to fund our alpha program in terms of a source of funding on that. And then the other point I'd make is, even though in that far right-hand column, return expectations, you can see these are various capital market return assumptions. You'll see treasuries and TIPS with very low return expectations, 0.7 and 1.3. And that's, of course, across time over a 10-year horizon. But just as sort of a reminder, a fresh reminder, in 2020, for the year, the calendar year, so inclusive of all 12 months, our treasury portfolio actually returned 7.2%, and our TIPS portfolio returned 7.5%. So there is value in those assets remaining as a diversifying part of the portfolio. Onto the next slide, I think we'll have more of a summary of what this all means. Thank you. So we're again looking at this in different components. We're separating out the main part of the beta portfolio, if you will, and then showing the alpha portfolio, which represents the leverage separately. So if we're looking at it, that top block before the alpha program, running the existing portfolio through the current capital market return expectations, we would have a mean expected return of 558. The proposed mix that we're recommending to you today would be 666. Still quite low, either one, and certainly lower than the last time we revisited this back in 2017. And again, that's reflecting largely the cash rates back at 0. When we take the alpha program, and one of the recommendations here is to increase the target from 20 to 22%, we then get to that bottom block, which includes the impact of the alpha program on returns. And so we get to a current mix with current expectations at 615 versus a 728 with the proposed mix. So that alpha portfolio adds about 62 basis points to the expected return, similar to what we saw in the retirement plan. We could go to the next slide, please. So this is something that again, we've discussed, and we've just shown it in late last fall and doing the retirement plan review. Just always a reminder, when we talk about a mean expected return, we're literally talking about the mean of a wide range of outcomes. And this is just, again, it's a visual illustration. If we were to take a rough approximation of the mix of the portfolio that's being proposed, and if we were to start back, so each one of these lines, if you can imagine, is starting in 1940, and each line is a 5-year period. So 1940 for 5 years, 1941 for 5 years, et cetera, all the way to current day. Each one of these lines is a 5-year view of what this asset mix, how it would have performed over the past 70 or so years. And it's just to be very clear, returns could be higher, returns could be lower. This is the mean expectation. And this also does not include the alpha program modeling. Next slide, please. So this is a visual representation of balance we've used over the past 5 or 6 years. If we were running a perfectly balanced portfolio, balanced to rising or falling growth, rising or falling inflation, these 4 quadrants would be equal. That, again, for a large number of reasons, that's difficult to do, particularly in this environment. I'm showing this visual because it's also transparently showing that we are making a compromise on the balance, and you'll see it mainly in that falling growth environment, the dark blue in the lower left-hand corner. You can see visually that that's shrinking a bit. That is primarily the reduction in exposure to bonds, which provide that cushion to a portfolio when growth is falling below expectations. So it's still, actually, this is still, even the proposed endowment pool on the right side is still pretty balanced relative to most of our peers. And we are giving up a little bit from our current mix because of that compromise between balance and return. Next slide, please. So within the retirement plan, of course, the big input into the liability side is the return assumption. The endowment pool is something similar, but a little bit simpler at the same time, in that when we're managing endowments on behalf of donors, we've sort of made a deal with the donor, obviously, that we're going to prudently manage their funds over time. And the easiest way, or the most simplistic view of that, thinking about that, is if we have a donor that gives us $100,000 today to fund a scholarship, and that 100,000 generates a spending distribution according to our formula, we want the economic value of that spending distribution to be the same today, or really to say the same 50 years from now as it is today. So what that really means is that we need to make sure that we're investing the funds and managing the spending distributions in a way that we can simplistically account for inflation. So we can't distribute the entire return we expect to get that doesn't allow for inflation, that doesn't allow for the preservation of purchasing power. And if we didn't account for this, then the donor's gift over time, the value of that gift and the value of that scholarship outcome would be eaten away year after year with inflation. So this is just the check to say, what are you distributing? So on the left-hand side, our spending distribution, we're headed down to 4%. We were at 4.5, we're headed to 4. We'll be there in FY23. The administrative distribution for development activities is 125. So our outflows are 525 in total. So if we look at the right-hand side with the expected return of 728, and the inherent inflation assumption in the capital market assumptions is 190, so that gets us to a real return of 538. So the check and balance is, does the expected real return cover the annual distributions? And again, in this case, it does. And so that tells us that we're prudently managing the donor funds. Next slide. So risk characteristics. Again, just talking about the differences between the retirement plan and the endowment pool, and why the asset allocation is beginning to diverge a bit more. So the endowment pool, of course, it's an active living entity which will be driven by perpetual fundraising. So the endowment pool will continue to grow, will continue to aggregate donor gifts to support our mission, and that will live on as the institution does. We know, in contrast, the defined benefit plan, we've closed to new participants. So over a number of decades, that plan will continue to shrink. In terms of sort of the liability side, the endowment pool has what I'd say is a pretty conservative and prudent spending policy that does a calculation for distributions across a 28-quarter market value average. What that does is it dampens volatility, shorter term market volatility. So it insulates that spending distribution going to fund the scholarships and faculty positions. It insulates that from market volatility. So the distribution itself is prudent and conservative, And then the way we calculate that is spread over a 7-year period that's rolling to dampen the volatility. Because what we never want to do, which happened during the financial crisis, we never want a situation where the dollar amount of the distributions going out actually falls year over year. I mentioned, the retirement plan. We also have the issue in the retirement plan with it maturing is the retirement plan will be in a net negative cash position because benefit payments will continue to grow. The contributions going in will shrink. And again, in contrast, the endowment pool, we would expect to continue to grow and to continue to be at least a net cash flow neutral. So those things really have an impact. We described it in a little bit more detail in the materials, but it impacts the appetite for volatility. It impacts the liquidity needs, and also it impacts the capacity for private market assets, which tend to be tied up over a little bit longer time period and with the expectation of a higher return. So that's well, I'm sorry, there's one more slide. Next slide is just a summary again of the difference. Showing you, so 3% more private equity in the endowment pool, 1% more private debt, a little bit less in sovereign bonds and commodities. The risk numbers, I apologize, I just saw this morning, those are flipped. The endowment pool is 12.4, the retirement plan is 11.3. But the point is that the risk, the standard deviation measure, is 1.1% higher in the endowment pool. So that reflects that increased risk that we're willing to take in the endowment pool, less willing to take in the retirement plan. So that is a summary of the materials, and happy to answer any questions. Again, Jeff from Veris is on as well.
Tom, this is Jeff Lehman. I wondered if you could just speak quickly to, again, I noticed the commodity exposure decreased. I just want to see if you had any comments on that, please.
So that was part of the calculus with the balance for the return expectation. By letting that decline slightly, what I would say, which gets in a little bit more to the weeds, but the risk balanced allocation for which we're adding capital to, that has a commodity allocation within it. And so we're giving up a little bit of the commodity exposure on the line item. We're picking up a little bit within that risk balanced allocation. But it really is, it's there, as you know, it's there in the portfolio as an inflation hedge largely.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the members of the board? Hearing none, is there, and there's no further discussion, may I have a motion and a second from the committee to approve the existing investment policy of collective rules and regulations, section 140.013, be amended as noted in the meeting materials before you, and the asset allocation changes noted should occur in a methodical manner over a reasonable period of time as determined by the investment staff.
So moved.
I'll second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed by saying nay. Are there any abstentions? The vote is unanimous. So the committee chair, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the existing investment policy of collective rules and regulations, section 140.013, be amended as noted in the meeting materials before you, and the asset allocation changes noted should occur in a methodical manner over a reasonable period of time as determined by the investment staff.
Thank you, Greg. A motion is made to approve the amendment to CRR 140.013, as Curator Hobrock just stated. Do I have a second from the board?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion from the board? Okay, any further discussion? Okay, if none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Do we have any abstentions? Okay, the
I'll
motion,
abstain because, Curator Chapman, I'll abstain due to my job. I'm required to. Thank you.
okay, we have one abstention. The motion carries. Okay. All right, Curator Hobrock, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Our next action item is the fiscal year 2022 student housing dining rates. I'll ask Vice President Rapp to give us an overview of the proposal.
Thank you, Curator Hobrock. There's additional information contained in your materials. If we go to the first chart of the presentation, our goal really is to provide and offer reasonable rates that are affordable to our students. But I do think as we move forward, one of the things that is important is that we maintain a financially, at a minimum, a financially sustainable housing and dining operation. I think we continue to have some work to do in that space. You know, our goal would be that our housing and dining operations would not be a drag on central funds that are used to support the mission at a minimum, and if run well, would have the potential to provide resources back to the university. If we then go to the next chart, this is just showing you a summary of what's contained in the materials. It shows that we offer a range of options. I think that's something we've continued to hear from our students is, you know, there are some students who want the higher amenity experience, but we also have a fair number of students who want, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it, the more Spartan type of dorm room experience. You know, all of these increases, some of them are driven by contractual arrangements. While slightly above inflation, they're still reasonable. They also move us in the direction of accomplishing, of achieving a sustainable level of operations in these areas. But this just gives you a range. You can see at MU, the range is anywhere from $10,275 to $6,100 in terms of room options. If we then go to the next chart, I'll ask if there's just any questions that members of the board might have.
Hearing no questions, are there any, if there is no further discussion, may I have a motion and a second from the committee to approve the schedule of rates as outlined in the materials before the members of the board for Residence Hall, Family Student Housing at MU, UMKC, Missouri S&T, University of Missouri St. Louis campuses, effective beginning with the 2021 summer session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying nay. Are there any abstentions? Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the schedule of rates as outlined in the materials before the members of the board for the residence halls and family student housing on MU, UMKC, Missouri S&T, and UMSL campuses effective with the 2021 summer session be approved.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. A motion is made to approve the fiscal year 2022 student housing and dining rates as just stated. Do I have a second from the board?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Do we have any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Curator Hobrock, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Our third action item today is project approval for the Research Commons Thermal Plant at MU. I'll ask Vice President Rapp to make a presentation for the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Curator Hobrock. I don't have any charts for these next items, but in your materials, the project budget is proposed to be $9 million. We will be funding this from the capital reserves that we set aside as part of the energy management operations at MU. The construction is expected to be completed by July of 2023. in addition to just this being a renewal project for the campus, it will also be critically important to doing this as we look at completing the next gen facility and then the new hospital tower on the south end of campus. Are there any questions that the committee has regarding this action item?
Hearing no questions and hearing no further discussions, I have a motion and a second from the committee to approve the MU Research Commons Thermal Plant Project.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Are there any abstentions? Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the MU Research Commons Thermal Plant Project be approved.
Okay, thank you, Greg. A motion is made to approve the project for the Research Commons Thermal Plant at MU as stated. Do I have a second from the board?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, if none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, all those opposed say nay. Do we have any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. I turn it back over to Curator Hobrock.
Thank you, Chairman Chapman. My fourth action item is project approval for the Student Experience Center at the Missouri S&T. Again, I'll ask Vice President Rapp to handle questions and lay this project out.
Thank you, Curator Hobrock. This project would have been included in the capital plan for Missouri S&T last year, and then with the interruptions of COVID, we put those on hold. But this is a project that's been critically important to their campus. Chancellor Degani's available as well if you might have questions. We put in the materials where it would be located. The total project budget for this is $30 million and will be funded by gifts. I think it's critically important not only for their student experience, but as we know, they've been working on redesigning the front entrance to the campus and are very excited to move forward with this project. It is anticipated that this would be completed by December of 2023. If you look at 4-3 in your mailing materials, you can see where the Student Experience Center is located and how the entrance to the campus will change along with its location next to the current Havner Center. But are there any questions the committee or members of the board would have for myself or Chancellor Degani?
I have one. I wanted to see if the chancellor wanted to give us a thought of how this center fits in with the Cummer gift and the vision for S&T.
Yes, thank you, Curator McCarron. I have included some material for reading as overall view of the arrival plan. This is one of the 3 elements for the arrival plan, but it was discussed with the Cummer Foundation Board and they have approved it. It is a critical addition to our campus, particularly for attracting, science and engineering stellar candidates to our university. It is an area for our freshmen to understand what career engineers do and how their work impacts the society and the broader state and country and as a whole. And of course, June and Fred Cummer are very excited about this opportunity as they are funding it, and we are excited about having it.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or discussions? Hearing none. May I have a motion and a second from the committee to approve the Student Experience Center on the Missouri University of Science and Technology campus?
So moved.
I guess I'll second. I was going to see if David wanted to jump in.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Are there any abstentions? Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the Student Experience Center, the University of Missouri Science and Technology Campus be approved.
Okay, a motion is made to approve the project for a Student Experience Center at Missouri S&T as stated. Do I have a second from the board?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Do we have any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. I turn it back over to you, Curator Hobart.
Thank you. For our final action item today, the architect engineer hiring for the indoor practice facility at MU. I'll ask Vice President Rapp to present the project.
Thank you, Curator Hobrock. We've also got our athletic director from Mizzou, Jim Sturk, available for any questions you might have. Today, what we're asking for is approval to move forward with the architect and engineering hiring for the indoor practice facility. We do note that the total project budget is $31.7 million. We're not seeking approval for that we would plan to come back to have that approved in May, but allowing us to move forward with the architect and engineering hire at this point would allow us to meet the schedule of having this ready by August of 2022. We've currently, I think, fundraised over 20 million for this project. So feel comfortable with moving forward with this. And really are just seeking authorization today to move forward with a design fee approval of up to 1.5 million. And I'll stop there and ask, based on the materials that have been provided, if you have any questions for myself or Athletic Director Sturk.
I do. On the second page, the very last paragraph, it talks about the project fee. Could you go into that and explain so that we understand who's getting that fee and what is a type 3 fee?
Yeah, so I'll explain to you at a high level, and then I can get you some additional information on the type 3 fee. We actually have a defined process for selecting design services, and so those fees would be paid to the architectural and engineering firms that we hire. We go through, and I think are required under statute to go through a qualification-based selection. So those aren't fees that are being paid internally to staff. Those are being paid to the architect and engineers that we would hire. That being said, as far as it does relate, we often show what the construction cost is in our materials. And I think that is something that we do need to provide the board with clarity on. It's really the construction cost of what we would expect the construction contract to be. We do have items that we go ahead and hire people outside of that construction cost for. So for example, the cost of permits and inspections, we pay those directly. Our reason for doing that is so our contractor doesn't charge us a markup for that. Our materials testing, telephone data, HVAC controls, utilities, those things are all done outside of our prime construction contract, but it's still money that we're paying to third parties. And then there is a internal fee for the project management teams that we provide as well on projects.
I would like to add that when I saw those numbers, for some of you know, I went ballistic because it was a 25% markup. I just went ballistic and got a complete breakdown of what's in that $5 million of fees. I think, Robin, I shared that with you when I got it. And after putting back in or busting those fees up and putting the numbers back into construction that are truly construction, I looked at the overall markup on the project. It turned out to be right at 10%. Maybe a little bit under. I can't remember the numbers today, which are in line with what we'd expect in the construction industry for the AE and the owner's rep portion of that. So at that stage, I became a little more in favor of the project because now the fees and everything made sense. I would also like to point out that we are not approving the project. We're approving the design to hire the architect and the engineer. We've said all along as a board, this project would not go forward if the funds were not raised to do that. We want the project to go forward. We want to get it on schedule, but if we don't raise the money, I will be a no vote when asking to fund the entire project. I don't think Jim is surprised by that statement. I've said it several times. But I do want to push this project forward, and I want it to stay on schedule. Are there any other comments or questions? Hearing none. May I have a motion and a second from the committee to approve the architect engineer hire for the indoor practice facility on the University of Missouri Columbia campus? Robin, Michael, or David?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Again, we thought David would want to do this one.
I'm texting him saying it's your turn.
I don't know why you guys think I like to talk. I don't know what would have given anybody that impression.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Are there any abstentions? Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I move to recommend to the full board the architect engineering hire of the indoor practice facility of the University of Missouri Columbia campus be approved.
Okay, a motion is made to approve the architect engineer hire for an indoor practice facility at MU as stated. Do I have a second from the board?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion from the board? If none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Okay, do we have any abstentions? The motion carries. All right, thank you, Curator Holbrook. I think that concludes the Finance Committee meeting. Am I correct?
You are correct, Mr. Chairman. That concludes our report.
Thank you so much. Curator Winokur, I now turn the meeting over to you for the Academic Student Affairs Research and Economic Development Committee meeting.
Thank you, Curator Chapman. Today, we have 4 action items for the Academic Student Affairs Research and Economic Development Committee for 4 new academic programs. Before we begin, I would like to make some general comments on behalf of the committee relating to academic programs at the 4 universities. As the University of Missouri system addresses this new education and budgetary environment brought on in part by the coronavirus pandemic, we wanted to take this opportunity, to articulate the board's expectations and priorities when it comes to academic programs across the 4 universities. In general, it is our expectation that new and existing programs will be prioritized on the basis that they are innovative, that they are self-sustaining, and generate net revenue to support the university's mission and strategic investments, and that they align meaningfully with student and employer workforce needs. The board recognizes this is a challenging time for institutions as we grapple with real budget challenges, and we appreciate the thoughtful work already underway at all 4 universities to review programs. Additional program closures, mergers, and consolidations will likely be appropriate, and we know they will be difficult decisions. We encourage academic leaders to engage faculty and seek input in the decision-making process. Our chancellors, provosts, and deans have our full support as they make these hard choices. Now I would like to hand it over to Senior Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs, Steve Graham, to make introductory comments about this morning's 4 action items.
Thank you, Curator Winokur. Today, we will be reviewing 4 different proposals: a Bachelor of Science in Applied Psychology, Child Advocacy Studies from UM St. Louis, a Bachelor of Arts in Public Administration and Policy from MU, and 2 proposals from Missouri S&T, 1 master's program in water science and engineering, and a bachelor's program in science education. These programs have been reviewed by the 4 universities, and the proposals that you see in front of you today are the product of some significant revisions and discussions among the campuses and the authors. Representatives from each of these campuses will present the proposal and make brief comments for 3 or 4 minutes and allow you time for questions if you have them. With that, I turn it over back to Curator Kerr.
Thank you. First, we will hear from Dr. Andrew Kirsten, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, to discuss the BA in Applied Psychology of Child Advocacy Studies. Dean Kirsten.
Good morning. Thank you. The Bachelor of Arts in Applied Psychology of Child Advocacy Studies, we have shortened this long title to AP-CAST, is an innovative, accessible, and valuable new degree that prepares graduates for a variety of child-serving sectors. This program fills a large gap in bachelor-level education and credentialing. If approved, this degree will be one of only 3, known majors of its kind in the country. The AP-CAST degree will directly serve the workforce needs of the region and the state. Projected growth in related career fields is high. Prior to the pandemic, there was a significant statewide labor market demand. The unprecedented family stressors generated by COVID-19 and the accompanying surge of child abuse and neglect cases have heightened this need. There's also a clear need in rural communities that AP-CAST can address. The University of Missouri St. Louis has deep capacity in the online space, and this program is committed to capitalizing on that flexibility by offering courses in fully online and hybrid formats, as well as in-person courses. We project this program will be large, not small. In addition to community demand, there's also demonstrated student demand. A Child Advocacy Studies certificate and minor have been offered at the University of Missouri St. Louis since fall 2014. This program has experienced triple-digit percentage increases in student enrollment growth. It has already conferred 51 certificates and 66 minors. CAST courses generate between 450 and 600 student credit hours each semester. Financially, it is helpful to have the existing revenue from the certificate program supporting the expansion to a bachelor's degree. It is also helpful to be able to build upon UMSL's nationally recognized Child Advocacy Center. AP-CAST will feature hands-on skill development and immersive learning experiences. Course designs include instruction through problem-based learning simulation and exercises within programs' existing mock house simulation lab. This affords students authentic opportunities to hone their skills in this important field. Finally, UMSL is well positioned to offer this degree quickly. We already have the initial faculty in place. As Dean, I'm committed to covering any startup costs, and any growth in faculty is projected only to follow growth in students, and only after several years of success and a close review of need and viability. This degree is a win for UMSL, for the UM system, and most importantly, for the children of Missouri.
Are there any questions for Dean Kirsten?
Yes, Curator Winokur, I have one. I know that at UMSL, you guys do a very good job of tracking the cost of your courses and your revenue generated by those. I'm excited to know I can find that. Have you done a cost analysis of this program as to whether we're going to put us in a net positive or net negative cash position on this program?
Yes, we have correlated that net positive to student enrollment growth. And that enrollment growth, the structure of that was built on the existing minor and certificate program. Looking at the delta with the student growth in those programs, we looked at what would be a number that would allow for a net positive going forward. And those numbers are in the pro forma that we delivered. Happy to talk more about that if you would like.
No, that's fine. When I read through it, I didn't catch that. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, if there's no further discussion, thank you, Dean Kirsten. May I have a motion and a second from the committee that the new degree proposal for a Bachelor of Arts in Applied Psychology for Child Advocacy Studies at the University of Missouri, St. Louis be approved?
So moved.
I second the motion.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Are there any abstention? Okay, the motion carries. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Academic, Student Affairs, Research, and Economic Development Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the new degree proposal for a Bachelor of Arts in Applied Psychology for Child Advocacy Studies at UMSL be approved.
Okay, a motion is made to approve the new degree program, a Bachelor of Arts in Applied Psychology of Child Advocacy Studies at UMSL. Do I have a second from the board?
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions? Okay, if none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Do we have any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. I'll turn it back over to you, Curator Winokur.
Thank you. Our next presentation will be from Lael Kaiser, Director of the Truman School of Public Affairs and Interim Chair of the Department of Political Science at the University of Missouri, to discuss the BA in Public Administration and Policy. Dr. Kaiser.
Thank you. We are proposing a new Public Administration and Policy BA. This degree will be offered fully online, on campus, and in a hybrid model. The degree is interdisciplinary and prepares students for careers in public and nonprofit agencies, as well as several different graduate programs. The core knowledge and skills focus on those that are needed to manage public agencies, determine and implement public policies, and to communicate to the public to solve problems at the community, state, national, and international level. The degree will be housed in the new Truman School of Government and Public Affairs, which was recently created just this week by merging the Political Science Department and the School of Public Affairs within the College of Arts and Science. Offering this degree does not require any new faculty, and we predict that it will be revenue generating within the first 2 years. The program aligns with university strategic plans. First, it should increase enrollment. Based on our market analysis, as well as feedback from students, we believe it will lead to an increase in enrollment and provide enhanced opportunity for students both on campus and online. In particular, we expect this degree to attract transfer students in the public administration field who already have an associate's degree already, but are interested in a BA related to public administration, such as police officers. This is a good example. We also believe we will attract students based on our proximity of the MU campus to Jefferson City, which is the center of state government. We have heard from students that they are interested in a degree that focuses on public administration and public policy on the MU campus. For example, in 2018, the MU Student Senate passed a resolution encouraging MU to create a minor for careers in public policy. The degree also aligns with the strategic goal of creating degrees to meet workforce needs. The public and nonprofit sectors face several workforce challenges, such as an aging workforce and many demands and needs. Our market analysis conducted by the Office of E-Learning predicted that the number of jobs is expected to grow in this field over the next 10 years with a predicted employment trend of 8.8%. We can offer this degree while using existing resources. The Truman School already offers a Master's of Public Affairs, which focuses on public administration and public policy. We're already in the process of cross-leveling many of our electives in our MPA so that these courses can serve both undergraduate students and graduate students. 2 of the required courses in the proposed major are already taught in the Department of Communication, and 1 is already taught by political science. Because the degree is interdisciplinary, there are many existing appropriate courses in other departments that can also serve as electives. UMSL has a complementary degree in their Department of Political Science, and we are working with them on course sharing for several courses so that we can provide more electives in the online environment. We're confident that this degree will be successful, particularly because of our recent merger between the Truman School of Public Affairs and the Department of Political Science. The Truman School has a history of success in managing and growing online programming. For example, we launched our online MPA in 2014, which has grown from 15 students in the first year to 170 students this year. We have also demonstrated success in connecting students with careers in public agencies and nonprofits. Through this merger, we have also gained faculty and staff from political science with experience in successfully offering a BA. The political science department currently has 549 students in its major. This combined experience makes me very confident that we can successfully offer the Public Administration Policy BA to serve the needs of students while also generating revenue in a short period of time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. In addition, Arts and Science Dean Pat Oker is here, and the Truman School's Director of Academic Programs, Kathy Miller, are also available for questions. Thank you for your consideration.
Questions from the committee?
Oh,
go ahead, Greg.
One surprise, surprise. Again, I guess maybe I watched numbers too much. If I read the material correctly, over 5 years, your proposal says to be a net cash revenue of roughly $70,000. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I was going to compliment you. Thank you so much for addressing workforce and collaboration in your presentation. That's greatly appreciated. Okay, if no other questions, we'll keep going. If there's no further discussion, may I have a motion and a second from the committee that the new degree proposal for a Bachelor of Arts in Public Administration and Policy at the University of Missouri be approved?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Academic Student Affairs, Research, and Economic Development Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the new degree proposal for a Bachelor of Arts in the Applied, somehow I jumped screen. Sorry about that. My fault. New degree proposal in the Bachelor of Arts in Public Administration and Public Administration and Policy at Mizzou be approved.
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, hearing no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All those opposed say nay. Okay, hearing none. Do we have any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. I turn it back over to you, Curator Winokur.
Thank you. Dr. Stephen Roberts, Interim Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs at Missouri S&T, will provide an overview of the proposal for a new MS in water degree in engineering, water science, and engineering at Missouri S&T. Provost Roberts.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the entire board for the opportunity to present this proposal and the following proposal. It's always an honor to do so. Just as a small aside at the beginning, Missouri S&T does not bring many new degree proposals before the board. I've been at the university 7 years, and to my knowledge, exactly one degree proposal has been stood up in the past 7 years. And so this is an exciting time for us to be presenting a couple of new ones to the board. So first off, we have the MS in Water Science and Engineering. Missouri S&T aims to offer a cutting-edge interdisciplinary master's degree program in water sciences and engineering that integrates the expertise of multiple departments across the university to provide new education and research opportunities for the next generation. Our students will develop an inter and multidisciplinary understanding to address society's grand challenges of water sustainability and water security. These are essential areas as global demand for food, energy, and water are expected to rise by 60% in the next 30 years. On a global scale, the availability and access to clean drinking water is the single largest factor affecting human health. And as a result, access to clean drinking water has been identified by the National Academy of Engineering as one of the 14 grand engineering challenges. The objectives of the proposed degree program include preparing engineers and scientists to specialize in understanding water resources from an interdisciplinary viewpoint, preparing students from different backgrounds for a wide variety of careers relating to water resources, and to benefit society by helping industries and government manage, remediate, and secure vital water resources through the development of a highly qualified workforce. By relying on existing courses with additional capabilities for enrollments, we are able to provide a very unique but low-cost program with a fully online option. Support for this program is strong because the water science and engineering degree directly addresses many aspects of our university's strategic plan, including key aspects such as building a culture with increased emphasis on high impact research and scholarship, as well as serving industry and community needs by producing a stream of civic-minded, workforce-ready graduates. State and national demand for the water science and engineering graduates is high. In the last year, there are more than 45,000 openings nationally and almost 600 in Missouri for positions that would suit graduates of the program. It's expected that the state of Missouri will need over 20% more natural science managers and water resource specialists over the next decade. Considering the strong national focus on inter and multidisciplinary research associated with water, that's including technology, management, resources, sustainability, water security, et cetera, we believe our graduates will be in a very strong position to fill growth in any of these sectors. The student demand for this program at S&T is high, in that undergraduates from a wide variety of our science and engineering disciplines can feed directly into the water science and engineering master's degree. A survey of students in relevant programs indicated a very strong interest and support for the program. And moreover, a focus of the water science and engineering degree is unique in the Midwest region. It's unique in the state, and therefore should be successful for recruiting students from a broader region. We believe this proposed program strongly aligns with S&T's mission, societal needs, and student employer demand. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. This looks like a really excellent program. As you look around the country, are there universities currently that are leaders in this area of water science? Because this is a worldwide problem, and I'm glad to see that we'll be stepping into it. But who are the leaders around the country right now?
Thank you, Curator Graham. I'm going to defer that question to our Chair of Geology, Geophysics, and Geological and Petroleum Engineering, David Borak, who is on the call with us and who can speak to that in greater detail.
Certainly. Thanks for the question. I'd say one of the leaders is the University of Arizona, who has a unique hydrology program with master's and PhD. There's one that's very successful at the Colorado School of Mines right now that's purely in this hydrology, interdisciplinary hydrology area too. So I'd say that they're a leader. Sort of in the more engineering focused area, University of Iowa is world renowned in that area. Michigan State University has some expertise. So I'd say those are probably in the top 10.
So this is an opportunity for lots of reasons.
I believe so.
Other questions? Thank you, Curator Graham. I will say when I was reading these, this was one that jumped out at me. Perhaps it's my industry, but it just feels like the concept and talking, the conversation about water just keeps increasing. So I think this is timely and exciting. I'm watching Curator Chapman nod his head because I think we both have sat in presentations in agriculture talking about water in the future. Any other questions? Okay, there's no further discussion. May I have a motion and a second from the committee that the new degree proposal for a Master of Science in Water Science and Engineering at the Missouri University of Science and Technology be approved?
So moved.
Second.
Great. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great. Did I get everybody? All those opposed, nay. Are there any abstention?
Thank you, honey.
Okay, the motion carries. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Academic, Student Affairs, Research, and Economic Development Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the new degree proposal for a Master of Science in Water Science and Engineering at the Missouri University of Science and Technology be approved.
Second.
Okay, hearing a motion, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion from the board? Okay, we have none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Do we have any abstentions? The motion carries. Okay, I'll turn it back over to you, Curator Winokur.
Last one. Thank you to everyone. Interim Provost Roberts will also be presenting our final new degree proposal. And as he indicated, a second new degree for after maybe, what'd you say, over a decade, you thought, Provost Roberts?
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Exciting. For consideration, a BS in education to be offered by the Missouri University of Science and Technology. Provost Roberts.
Thank you, Curator Winiger. This proposal addresses a statewide shortage of K through 12 teachers, especially in STEM disciplines. and especially serving in rural areas of the state, particularly the South Central region, which is one of the most impoverished areas of the state and nation, where access to exceptionally trained teachers is vital for economic improvement. S&T is an institution with a heavy STEM emphasis, and an education program at Missouri S&T provides needed teachers to schools across the state. Evidence of employer demand can be found in the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education 2020 Teacher Shortage Report. And the certification areas with the worst shortages include elementary, middle school, science, middle school math, and middle school social sciences, all of which are emphasis areas in this proposal. Missouri S&T is not new to training teachers. In fact, we've been training teachers for over a decade. Secondary education teachers study within a major in undergraduate, specific undergraduate degree programs. And then they take additional courses to round out the program to satisfy teacher certification requirements. Our elementary education and middle school teachers earn their credentials within the BA program in multidisciplinary studies. There are currently over 100 undergraduate studies in the teacher education program at S&T, and that's more than the number of students in the nuclear and petroleum engineering programs combined. The program has survived and thrived without a degree program in education or an academic department until very recently. The department now exists. It's a very small one, but it has the personnel and assets to provide the very best education and training for future teachers. Our university's strong link with Project Lead the Way training is key to this success and explains why the state has specific line funding for S&T's Project Lead the Way training program for its teachers, and why Missouri S&T is one of only very few universities nationwide with the highest level of partnership status with Project Lead the Way. S&T proposed the BS in education to expand the program to produce more teachers for the South Central region of Missouri. A degree program, a named degree program, will help recruit externally and retain internal students who do not match with another STEM field such as engineering. A Bachelor of Science in Education is needed for recruiting new students. A named degree will formalize the curriculum and will allow the new Department of Teacher Education and Certification to manage the degree. Currently, students pursuing, as I said, pursuing elementary and middle school certifications are in the Bachelor of Arts in Multidisciplinary Studies. These students have some concern that this generic degree makes them less marketable than others with a true education degree. And the proposed curriculum for this degree is streamlined, 121 credits in most cases, and designed to easily articulate with nearby community colleges. The Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has already approved the list of courses for the emphasis areas. There are no additional resources needed to deliver the BS in education. The department is well-staffed and includes a faculty member that is co-funded by the System Extension for STEM outreach, K-12 STEM outreach across the state. Furthermore, the department and the BS program will be key components of the newly established Fred and June Kummer Center for Excellence in STEM Education. This multi-million-dollar enterprise is a pillar of Fred and June's vision to improve education and drive economic prosperity in Missouri. So in conclusion and summary, all coursework and faculty for the BS in education already exists. The proposal formalizes the program and places authority for curricular changes, policy exemptions, and course sharing with the teacher education department. This proposal gives S&T an education degree with a federal CIP code in this field, so we'll be eligible for additional federal and state program dollars focused on teachers. A named degree program will help us recruit more students into the teaching field. Students currently taking educational courses are often from rural areas, and they are attracted to the small campus and rigorous content coursework at S&T. Of the 19 student teachers that are placed this spring, 15 of them have chose a rural school district placement. S&T is uniquely poised to attract high-quality STEM teachers and supply them to the rural schools in the region. Traditionally, elementary teachers are less comfortable with math and science, but S&T's program includes more of this content than most other programs. While we have included middle school language arts and social sciences because those courses already exist, our recruitment focus will be middle school math and science. Our current secondary enrollment reflects the STEM emphasis. S&T currently has more physics teachers in training than English teachers, which reflects a different demographic than the other system schools. And finally, the research by the American Physical Society indicates that half of STEM majors have considered teaching. On our campus, over 90% of students are in STEM fields, and an education degree in S&T's campus will allow us to retain and attract students who are passionate about teaching and making a difference. This is an essential service to the state and region where high-quality STEM teachers at all levels, including elementary, are desperately needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Any questions?
Robin, may I ask?
Absolutely.
Say something. First of all, Steve, I want to say congratulations to you and your team. I know how long and how hard you've worked on this and how well planned this has been over a period of years. There's two things, and it's important, obviously, to me to talk about the addition to rural, but I would like you to comment on how this also impacts our ability to reach out to minority populations, and particularly the inner city. And second of all, how do you view this as affecting Missouri S&T's enrollment and enrollment strategy? Because I personally think it provides a significant opportunity for increased enrollment.
Thank you, Curator Steelman. You hit it right on the head. The ability of our university to deliver and offer this program, I think, will profoundly improve our outreach and engagement of women and minorities who in particular have found access or interest in our university's programs a challenge over the years. And this would be a significant vehicle for creating opportunity and access to that incredible S&T degree. Your second point of, can you remind me the second point, Curator Steelman? First was
enrollment and increased opportunity.
Right, enrollment. So enrollment is a fascinating conversation right now. We do think that the program, as I've said, the program is already robust. There are more students studying to be a teacher on this campus than there are those studying to be a chemist. And that is a very unique statement for Missouri S&T. Right now, our enrollment trends are very, very positive. Our first year deposits are up by about 50% from last year. Our master's degree applications and admits are up by over 100%. There is an incredible buzz ongoing at Missouri S&T, and it's been created by the very progressive and unique leadership and effective leadership of Chancellor Degani, as well as the Cummer gift, as well as our marketing and recruiting teams being far more progressive and proactive in communicating the benefits of a Missouri S&T degree. And so we do believe that not only will it drive an increase in enrollment, it will drive a diversification of our enrollment and a very badly needed diversification of our enrollment.
Other questions? Okay, if there's no further discussion, may I have a motion and a second from the committee that the new degree proposal for a Bachelor's of Science in Education at the Missouri University of Science and Technology be approved?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Academic, Student Affairs, Research, and Economic Development Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the new degree proposal for a Bachelor's of Science in Education at the Missouri University of Science and Technology be approved.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion from the board? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Do we have any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, Curator Winokur. Is there any further business of your committee?
No, I just want to thank Provost Roberts, Dean Kirsten, and Dr. Kaiser for their presentations. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the Academic Student Affairs Research and Economic Development Committee business. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Curator Winokur. Curator Lehman, I now turn it over to you for the Audit, Compliance, and Ethics Committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. The Audit, Compliance, and Ethics Committee has 3 information items and 2 action items today. The first information item is the Audit, Compliance, and Ethics Quarterly Report. Chief Audit and Compliance Officer Michelle Peranio will present the Audit, Compliance, and Ethics Quarterly Report. She will highlight the audit work since the September 2020 Board of Curators meeting. A full report is also available in your Audit Committee materials. Michelle's available for any questions the committee might have. Michelle?
Thank you, Curator Lehman. Can you move to the next slide, please? This is just a reminder of our framework that we are using to stay focused on the high-risk areas and compliance gaps in this challenging year that we've all experienced. And so the next slide, please. Currently on our rolling audit plan, we have 30 audits and consulting engagements, 8 which have been completed and 2 are in the final phase, 6 are in process. We've also completed 9 investigations and are actively working 2 investigations. And you can see on the right hand of the slide that our activities since the September 2020 meeting, we completed 5 internal audits and 6 investigations, and we're finalizing 2 internal audits and have 5 in process. And we are actively working 2 investigations. And so I would like to highlight just 2 of the audits that we completed briefly. Next slide, please. The first is our conflict of interest process at MU. And identifying and managing these conflicts of interest is a key control for ensuring the integrity in our research and business activities. And this is important with the continued concern over undue foreign influence and our strategic imperative of increasing research. So our audit work identified opportunities to improve the timeliness and the development and oversight of management plans by shifting the responsibility to the chair supervisor with assistance from subject matter experts. And this aligns the responsibility with those who have the authority to ensure that the appropriate changes are made and that the conflicts are managed. For research engagements that have an inherent conflict, we're shifting the implementation of the oversight management plans to the point at which the engagement begins. And the leadership in research compliance and Office of Sponsored Programs and Administration we're already moving towards this. So in our audit follow-up work, we will just confirm that this is completed. In making conflicts of interest and commitments part of mandatory annual training, this will remind faculty and staff of the importance of disclosing any new outside interests or potential conflicts at the point that they arise rather than waiting until the annual disclosure process. Currently, we only have reminders during the annual disclosure process to do that. The next slide, please. We also completed work audit of the MU data center operations. Confidentiality, physical security, and availability controls within the data center were examined. 40 controls were evaluated against an industry framework of best practices and internal policies and procedures. So we identified updates to disaster recovery business continuity plans are needed, but this is an essential function for any business. In development and updating of these plans have dependencies across departments and functions requiring a coordinated effort. So we affirm that this work will be coordinated through the System Director of Emergency Management. And this director came on board in January of 2020 and has done a tremendous job coordinating our response efforts to the pandemic and is excited to jump on board with looking at business continuity and disaster recovery. Next slide, please. As for the implementation of the ethics and compliance program, we have work underway to develop a system-wide audit and compliance committee by April of 2021. And this committee will oversee our audit work, our risk assessments, our compliance work as it occurs, and receive reports from various other compliance functions throughout the system and have leadership oversight of this function. And we also have a code of conduct and development is underway. Our goal is to have one code in terms of content, but variations and elements specific to each university will be branding and identity, the letters from the chancellors, the mission, vision, and values, and resource links specific to each of those universities. So those will be the variations that occur, but one code of conduct, which is really our shared commitment in how we want to interact with one another and our stakeholders as we conduct our mission work. So it's a very important document to set the tone of who we say we are and how we behave and who we want to be. The next slide, please. We also have just received approval from the chancellors to implement our Protection of Minors on Campus program, which is very important for protecting any of our people 18 and below as they come on campuses to engage in activities and learn about the potential of a college education or different areas that they're interested in or athletic events. And so that we are moving forward with implementation of this. It will be managed centrally through ethics, compliance, and audit services. The requirements will include registering of the programs that involve minors on campus. There will be background checks and education that's mandatory for volunteers and staff. And we also have developed with the collaboration of the IT function, a youth program registry. So this automates a lot of this work, the registration of the programs, the background checks, the completion rates for training. It has a reporting function, so we will be able to track all of that and understand, even understand some characteristics about the types of programs we're offering. And it offers transparency into all of this. So the next steps are hiring a coordinator for this program and working with marketing and communications across the university to roll it out and educate about expectations and let people know about it and get people trained. So this is a very needed program for our universities, and we're excited to be moving forward with this. With that, I would just ask if there are any questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Do we have any questions from the committee? Okay, I'll move forward with our second information item, the University of Missouri System Reporting Hotline's annual report for 2020. The 2020 University of Missouri System Report Hotline annual report is provided to you in your materials. If you have any questions pertaining to the report, please bring them forward at this time. Do we have any questions for Michelle? Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and move to information item number 3. This is our external auditors report. Rachel Dwiggins, thank you very much, Michelle, by the way. Rachel Dwiggins, partner with BKD, will present the fiscal year 2020 auditors report and required communication, provide an overview of the NCAA agreed upon procedures report, and overview of the fiscal year 2021 audit scope, services, engagement, timeline, and approach. Rachel?
Thank you. yeah, I was just going to see if you guys had the presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to present this morning. As Curator Lehman mentioned, if you want to go to the next slide, our goals today are to talk about the audit results from fiscal year 2020, highlight the NCAA required agreed upon procedures, and then also spend a little bit of time talking about our 2021 external audit scope. So if you want to go to the next slide. As far as our audit approach goes, we follow and adhere to, from a financial reporting standpoint, generally accepted accounting principles in the United States. From an auditing standpoint, the system is subject to both the auditing standards generally accepted in the United States, as well as government auditing standards. And then from a compliance standpoint, I have the Code of Federal Regulations listed there. It's commonly referred to as the Uniform Guidance, or you'll also commonly hear us refer to the single audit. And that is basically the compliance auditing over all of the federally funded programs. Next slide. Also, before I get too far, I forgot to mention, also on the call is Fred Helfrich, who is the partner who oversees all of the audit procedures related to the health system. So he's also on the call as well. So our audit does encompass the audit of the financial statements of the system as a whole, and included in that is the health system, as well as a separately issued audit report over Capital Region Medical Center. The objective of the audits are to express opinions on the financial statements with respect to their conformity with those accounting principles generally accepted in the US in all material respects. So by all means, we are not auditing every transaction, but the goal is to express that opinion that the financial statements are materially correct in accordance with those standards. Next slide. So back in planning, we had communicated some areas that we would spend some significant focus of our audit on, and we like to circle back around then on the back end to let you know if there was anything that was deemed reportable with respect to any of those areas. I have those listed there. Obviously, with the volume of investments that the system has, both in the pension plan and then the endowment fund, that is obviously a significant risk area that we spend a lot of time in, but there were no matters to report with respect to that. Revenue recognition, both on the higher education side as well as the health system side, is a significant risk. And again, no matters to report there. Next slide. The other area where we spend a lot of time are any areas within the financials that do involve some sort of estimate process. And we have those all listed there. Any types of receivable accounts, we spend a lot of time making sure that those are collectible, that they are, that those estimates are reasonable. Again, the valuation of investments, particularly any, non-traditional alternative type investments, spend a lot of time testing those valuation procedures. The claims accruals, we look a lot at those, whether it's malpractice, general liability, workers' comp, health claims, making sure that we're comfortable with those accrual estimates. And then also with respect to the pension and the other post-employment benefits, obviously there's a lot of estimates involved in those. So we spend a lot of time looking at, there's an outside actuary obviously involved in some of these, and we look, make sure that we are comfortable with the assumptions that those actuaries use in our testing procedures. And then kind of new this year on the health system side is, we spent some time determining the revenue recognition related to the provider relief funds. Next slide. So the significant accounting policies are all described in footnote 1 to the financial statements. New this year was GASB 84, which was related to fiduciary activities. So if you looked at the financial statements, you might have noticed they looked a little bit different in that there was a couple new columns related to custodial funds. GASB 84 basically required the system to go through and really evaluate everything that had previously been accounted for as an agency fund, and determine if, based on a set of criteria, if those funds really were university funds or custodial funds. And so management spent a significant amount of time. We had to involve our, GASB experts working through that. So just wanted to commend management for working through that process, but you did see those changes in the financial statements, and it is all adopted appropriately, and moving forward, you will continue to see those new columns presented. Just highlighted here some of the more significant footnotes in the financial statements. Again, with respect to the fair value of assets and liabilities, you see a lot of information on how the fair value of your investments are determined in that footnote, as well as the pension and the other post-employment benefits footnotes. A lot of information there regarding some of those actuarial assumptions that are made in determining those liabilities. Next slide. So I'm happy to report that we actually had no proposed audit adjustments this year that needed to be recorded. You all probably recall we often have some things that come up that are not really deemed to be material, and we all agree, management agrees, to pass on those or not record those. You'll see the first item listed there, both under the system and the pension trust funds, is really the prior year turnaround effect of some of those last minute investment statements that come in, and those are evaluated every year to determine, do the financial statements need to be updated at the 11th hour, or can we agree to pass on that? So this is just the turnaround effect of those entries from last year, and we actually did not have any of that this year. So you will not see that next year. Couple other items, just a reclassification really between assets and liabilities with respect to some patient refunds and third-party settlements that between, again, offsetting the receivables versus showing those as a payable. Their present value of a lease obligation, one of the significant transactions this past year, the lease obligation was recorded, and we just agreed to pass on present valuing that back to the financial statement date, and it was not, again, deemed to be material. Let's see, next slide. So in addition to the system-wide deliverable, as I mentioned, there was the financial statements of Capital Region Medical Center, as well as a report on debt compliance related to that. And then we did issue the NCAA required agreed upon procedures for the Columbia and Kansas City campuses. Those are required to be done every year. The other two campuses are required every 3 years. So those did not fall into the rotation this year. And then still in process is the single audit report related to the uniform guidance compliance. With respect to all of the additional, I'll call them COVID-related programs that have come about this past year, the guidelines that we have to adhere to, the final guidelines actually were not even released until right before Christmas. So everything has been delayed. That deadline has been delayed. So actually it's the single audit report doesn't have a due date until June 30, 21. We are actively working through that, but just wanted to give you an update there. Those guidelines there for a while seem to be changing on a weekly basis, and the final ones, again, were not issued until the end of December. Next slide. So in conclusion, I guess, with kind of respect to 2020 audit, our independent audit report did include an unmodified opinion. So that is a clean opinion. It's the highest level of opinion that you want to receive, meaning that the financial statements were presented in accordance with the required accounting principles. And then with respect to the audit report on internal control over financial reporting in accordance with government auditing standards, we did not have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control reported in that statement. So if you read that, you know, it states that in the narrative of there, but want to make sure and highlight that we did not have any of those to report. Next slide. With respect to the NCAA agreed upon procedures, as I mentioned, those were required for Columbia and Kansas City campuses this past year. Now this next year will be the 3-year rotation, so all 4 campuses will be included in that. And there was nothing, no matters to report out of those procedures either. So good results there. Next slide. Looking ahead to 2021, and we can go ahead and go to the next slide actually. Again, you know, the engagements will be the same as what they were in 2020, with the exception of adding the 2 additional campuses for those NCAA agreed upon procedures. Next slide. Looking ahead at the timeline, so we will have a pre-audit planning meeting this spring. I will say we really have ongoing communication, honestly, throughout the year, but we will have more of a formal meeting later this spring, with then doing some of our interim procedures, risk assessment, other planning procedures in May. We typically then do the student financial aid testing right after year-end closes in July, and then begin kind of our procedures on the financial statements themselves in August, September, and October. And then once that's done, then we jump into the NCAA procedures in typically November, December. Next slide. Again, these are the reporting frameworks, and no differences here between last fiscal year and the fiscal year 21. So next slide. As a part of our risk assessment process, some of the things that we do to really develop and drive our plan is we do talk with many members of management. We do review board minutes. We look at internal financial statements to, you know, interim internal financial statements to see any areas where we think, you know, they may be susceptible to material misstatement. We evaluate any changes in internal controls, and then we really go through and select what the key internal controls are in the various reporting cycles, and we do a walkthrough of those controls to see if they are operating as they are designed. We also look at duties of individual employees in particular cycles, specifically with cash receipts, cash disbursements, to make sure we don't see any conflicting duties there. And so then we, next slide, we use all of that to come up with our assessment. Listed here, you know, preliminarily where we would see some of those higher risk areas being, but obviously until we go through that formal risk assessment process and those procedures later this spring, you know, these are subject to change. So next slide. Couple new accounting standards that will come into play this year. These are pretty minor compared to some that GASB 84, which was adopted in fiscal year 20. And then there is a new lease accounting standard on the horizon. It did get deferred due to COVID. So GASB did allow a deferral there. And I think everyone was, you know, very appreciative of that deferral, because that is going to be a big standard. These two here, I don't envision really having a big significant impact. The first one is going forward, interest on capital projects, instead of being capitalized and then really depreciated over the course of the project, it will just going forward be expensed as it's paid. That's honestly probably one of the accounting standards that people have been most excited about, because it's frankly easier to adopt. So, but again, neither of these standards will have a significant impact on the financials going forward. Next slide. So I just included here kind of the key members of the engagement team. So you have any of our contact information should you ever have any questions, concerns, or anything you want to discuss. Feel free to reach out to any of us at any time. So that concludes my presentation, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Do we have any questions for Rachel?
That was a good report.
Yes, it was. Again, we appreciate it very much, Rachel. Thank you. So I'll move on to our first action item, which is engagement of independent auditors and related fees. Vice President Ryan Rapp will discuss the engagement of BKD LLP as independent auditors for fiscal year 2021. Ryan.
Thank you, Curator Lehman. As part of the role of the board and the audit committee, we ask you annually to approve the engagement of our independent auditors. We competitively bid our audit firm in October, and that was approved by the board. This is just approving the annual engagement for the FY21 audit services. We are asking the audit committee and the board to approve combined fees and expenses of $622,000, which actually represents an 11% decrease in the fee and expenses, the normal audit services over the prior fiscal year. With that, I'll ask if there's any questions.
Any questions for Ryan? If there's no further discussion, may I have a motion and a second from the committee to approve that the Vice President for Finance be authorized to employ the firm of BKD LLP to provide audit services to the University of Missouri for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 for fees and expenses of $622,698.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye from the committee.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Are there any abstentions? Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Audit Compliance and Ethics Committee, I move to recommend the full board that the Vice President of Finance be authorized to employ the firm of BKD LLP to provide audit services to the University of Missouri for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021.
Okay, we have a motion. Can we get a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion from the board? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Do we have any abstentions? The motion carries. Okay, I'll turn it back over to you, Curator Lehman. Jeff, you're on mute.
Sorry. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our second action item is resolution for executive session. Can I get a motion, a second from the Audit Committee to conduct a closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. This concludes our business for public session, and the Audit Committee will reconvene in closed session later this afternoon.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Curator Lehman.
Curator Lehman.
Yes, Cindy?
Yes.
We'll need to have a roll call of your committee to go into closed
Okay.
session.
We got to have that.
Okay, so I'll turn it back over to Curator Lehman for the roll call, or Cindy?
Yes. Thank you. Cindy, please call roll.
Sure. Curator Burnsick.
Yes.
Curator Graham.
Yes.
Curator Lehman.
Yes.
Curator Snowden.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All votes in favor.
All right, thank you, Curator Lehman, and thanks to Rachel Wiggins and Michelle Peranio for their reports. Curator Stillman, I now turn it over to you for the Health Affairs Committee report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We're going to deviate, and I had told the chairman this and asked his permission, but not in enough time. Darrell will say he didn't get much lead time. But we're going to deviate a little bit instead of just reading the report. And we're going to read most of it, but the MU Healthcare report, CEO Jonathan Curtright will give an abridged version of what he gave to the healthcare and be available for questions. And Dr. Barron will give, our MU Health Executive Vice Chancellor will give a abridged report and open it for questions. And there's a reason why. I'm trying to kind of dovetail this with what the chairman has announced and talked about as the importance of increasing research. And it is my belief, and has been since I got on the board, that if MU is going to reach the level of research activity that I think the board and the administration requires, maybe even demands, then the primary driver of that will be the collaboration and partnership between MU Health, the medical school, and NextGen, as led, of course, by Dr. Choi. There will be other drivers, but without that being successful, I see absolutely no chance to get to the level of research that all of us are saying that we want. And so with that prelude, I will say we had 6 information items and 1 action item to approve. Dr. Zweig gave a very good report on the MU School of Medicine. The School of Medicine has created a high-performing governance structure and operation plans for recruiting, and this is the key, successful researchers within clusters that reflect the priorities of next-gen precision health. And I think Dr. Barron will elaborate on that. The first half of fiscal year 21 has shown clinical revenue is $7 million over budget. And we have to give congratulations to the whole team for that. And budget and research expenditures are $5 million over budget. So tremendous progress is being made. Research awards are up over 30% year to date. And of course, we're not through the year yet. Having said that, I would like to turn over to Dr. Barron to present the MU Health Executive Vice Chancellor report.
Thank you, Curator Stillman, and thanks for the opportunity to give you all an update on what's going on, primarily with NextGen, and then I'm going to mention a bit about what we're doing with COVID vaccinations. So if I can go to the next slide. People are always asking what's going on in NextGen and are things moving fast, and I can assure the curators that things actually are moving very fast at this time. Not only is the building going up very fast and on time and on budget, but there's a lot of other exciting things that are happening. We have our first wave of next-gen scientists that are moving in, that we've identified that will move in the building in October, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't quite ready. Yeah, I'll get to that in just a minute. I'll talk about our first imaging cluster hire. In the second floor of the Innovation Tower, we have plans to have an Industry Partners Innovation Center, and I'll show you that on the schematic. The things are really moving forward nicely now on the Data Science Analytics Innovation Center, particularly the health informatics part. And so Dr. Choi and Chancellor Agrawal consider this, and I do too, an integral part of NextGen. And I'll tell you why. So on the health part of the Data Science and Analytics Innovation Center, the leadership has made a decision recently to put that in charge of Dr. Russ Waitman. Dr. Waitman's a recent health informatics recruit to the University of Missouri, and he spends part of his time on the Columbia campus and part on the UMKC campus. And he is a nationally recognized expert in being able to get data out of the electronic medical record and leverage it for research purposes. So that is going to be the focus now of the data of the healthcare part of the NextGen DSAIC. And Russ is excited about taking that on. And so by campus. The other very nice by campus activity that's going on is a project that Dr. John Spurtis leads, and it's called the Healthcare Institute for Innovation and Quality, where Dr. Spurtis has developed an international reputation on doing targeted healthcare, precision healthcare delivery systems for different health problems. Mainly, he's worked in cardiology so far. So this now we also consider part of the NextGen focus, because back last May, we made Dr. Spurtis a faculty research lead in the NextGen Institute. And so this is a great next step in what he's building. he's going to be having webinars here on the Mizzou campus, and we're going to include MUHC in part of his new congestive heart failure precision health delivery project that he has several healthcare systems in Kansas City involved in. And so that's another by-campus operation. And then I'm going to mention a bit at the end about some next-gen education programs, which we want to have you all participate in. All right, now I'm ready for the next slide. So I'm really proud to show you our first wave of the scientists that are going to be in the building. And so I'm calling these next-gen naughts. So like astronauts, right? So where does that derivation come from? The naughts is Greek for sailors. And so these are discoverers. These people went out to discover things, and that's what our next-gen naughts are going to be doing too. And as you know, two of the big focuses of next-gen is cancer and immunology, and then cardiovascular and metabolic diseases. So all of these stars are have NIH funding currently, and some of them work together already, some not so much. And so we are going to put these teams in place in the building and to do team science and to generate more research productivity. So I'm really excited about this. On the next slide shows the schematic of the building. So the cardiovascular and metabolic team is going to take up probably a little less than half of the purple on the third floor. And so there'll be a lot of a space for other expansion. And the cancer and immunology group is going to take up a little more than half the space on the second floor, on the purple, which is the lab space. The Industry Partners Innovation Center, which we're planning, will go on the second floor in the yellow area. And this will be touchdown space for many of our industry partners, but particularly Siemens and Cerner and hopefully others. And will also be the site of the academic offices for the next-gen imaging cluster hires I'm going to talk about in the next slide. You can see our clinical translational science unit, which we also are still planning, where patients can come in to be in research studies, is in the yellow area on the third floor in the innovation tower. And then of course, down on the ground floor below ground level is the Siemens imaging core and the electron microscopy core and the animal vivariums. Next slide. The fourth floor, of course, is shelled out space for future expansion, but I anticipate that it will not take very long for us to be needing that space as well. This is the other really exciting thing that I wanted you to know about that we presented at the Health Affairs Committee. So we are getting this state-of-the-art Siemens imaging equipment. And in particular, the 7T magnetic resonance imaging scanner is the only one in Missouri and in Kansas. WashU does not have one. So it's really makes us unique. Plus, it'll be down there with the PET scan and with the 3T MRI. So we need scientists to leverage and utilize this equipment and for their own research, and also to make it available for others' research. Dr. Telly Altus, our talented chair of radiology, for over a year has been canvassing the country to find scientists that might want to move to Columbia, Missouri. And she found an amazing list of scientists, all at top tier universities. I don't have their names on here because we're still in negotiation with all of them. But many of them actually contacted her when they found out that this facility was going up, because they wanted to be part of it. In particular, the new generation 7T MRI scanner. So the nice thing about this cluster hire is that, well, there's several nice things. They'll be in two schools. They'll be in the School of Medicine, but every one of them will also have an academic appointment in either one of the arts and science schools or one of the engineering arts and science departments or one of the engineering departments. So we're really excited about that. And we're hoping that they can all, this group of 6, if they all accept the offers, will be here this summer before the building opens. And there actually is another one, a seventh, that a minority candidate that we hope will come in a year. She has another year left in her training. So this does cost money to bring this type of scientists on the campus, and it's not an insignificant amount. It's $8 million for 3 years, but in some sense, it's a bit of a bargain because they're not wet lab scientists, they're imaging scientists. So they're using the equipment that we already have in hand. And so most of it's FTE money, for themselves and their other people that they're going to need to do the imaging research and analysis. So for the first 3 years, the School of Medicine is in partnership with MUHC is going to cover most of this, and some of the next gen funds that the state, the Board of Curators, Dr. Choi has allocated for my use will help with some of the startup funds. So we're very excited about this, and I'll keep you updated. And Dr. Altis knows that she's, I call her almost every day to ask her how these recruitments are coming along. And she told me yesterday that her calls with the top 2 professors that she had yesterday went very well. So I'm optimistic. Next slide. The education. So we are starting to roll out a lot of educational programs, and some of these are going to be open to anyone in our MU system, and even the public will be able to hear these talks. I am starting a next gen precision health discovery lecture series. There'll be one a month. They'll be aimed at a general science audience. And I'm going to kick it off on February 10th with a noon lecture on next gen precision health. Where are we now and where are we going? So I'm excited to be starting this series. We have a number of people lined up to give talks throughout the year: Dr. Waitman, Dr. Spurtis, some visiting professors, and I think it'll really give everyone an idea of what's going on. I'm going to be talking broadly about what's going on in next gen, but then the others will be talking about next gen precision health in their specific area. There are also science seminars that are starting, and we're reaching out to groups of scientists in certain areas, whether or not it be cardiovascular, addiction, population health, neuro, and cancer. And those science groups are now gathering to basically brainstorm and write research proposals. So that's started too. And Tom Spencer and I are both making sure that those groups are going to be successful. Next slide. So that's the next gen update. I did want to say a few words about COVID and the major vaccination effort that's going on. So we have vaccinated here at MUHC now over 12,000 individuals. This is the first vaccination. So many of you have already seen this picture of Dr. Beck vaccinating one of our physicians. And then the next slide talks about where we've been and where we're going. So we've done all the healthcare workers. Now we're proceeding through the 1B group, and soon we'll be able to get to hopefully the 2 group, those that are at increased risk of acquiring or transmitting, people over 65 and others. And so people are calling in and getting registered to get on the list to get their vaccines. We have been designated as the centralized vaccination center for Central Missouri by the governor's office. And in response to that, our team, which is doing an amazing job, has set up in Walsworth Columns Club a vaccination center. So we had been doing these in the remodeled cafeteria in the basement of MUHC, but now it's all happening at the football stadium in Walsworth Columns Club. And we have the ability to vaccinate 4,000 to 5,000 a day. Now, obviously we're limited by how much supply the federal government and the state allot us. And so it's less than that, but once but everything that they give us, we are going to get in the arms of people in Walsworth Columns Club. And this week, we're going to be vaccinating 4,000. Next slide. And then finally, as you know, President Choi and Provost Ramchan and the other leaders on campus really insisted that for students to come back to school this spring, they had to be tested. And a number of them were tested on campus, a number were tested at home, and the results were sent in on campus. This was done at the Hearn Center, and that went very well, extremely well. And so, you know, kudos to everyone on the MU healthcare team and on the student health team and all of Dr. Choi's COVID executive committee for pulling both of these things together, and they're really going off very smoothly. So COVID is bad, but we're getting through it, and we can now see the light at the end of the tunnel, which is just terrific. I think next slide is, I think I'm done. I can pause here for questions before Mr. Kurtwright gives his MUHC update.
Can I bring up one more thing, Rick, just to get this corn down where the chickens can get at it? Because I want the board to be fully informed on this. The $8 million for that number of researchers is really a remarkably low number. Now, $8 million is real money, even in Boone County, but that's a remarkably low money. I don't know what you can talk about publicly or what we could do in closed session, because we're talking about personnel. But just so that the board is aware, you have done an amazing job of identifying potential hires in a particular area. And I don't know how much you can talk about it, but the cost on that to get these people would be 10 million startup per individual. Is that right? Or around there? You know, obviously that's.
Oh yeah, the image is for a lot of reasons. Imaging researchers, because we already have the equipment, aren't going to be as expensive to bring to Mizzou. But other traditional wet lab researchers and those doing investigator-initiated large clinical trials are going to be more expensive. And yeah, probably for the real stars that we want to attract from around the country, they'll be in that range. And we are, Dr. Choi has charged us to double down and come up with plans to get this to happen quickly. And so that's what we're working on now.
And again, not to talk about and scare everybody, and obviously there are decreasing prices on this. When we talk about $8 to $10 million per researcher in startup, we are, and they all won't be like this, but we are 10 to 16 Academy members short of where we need to be. Is that right, Dr. Choi?
At Mizzou, if we compare ourselves to those universities that are in the 25th percentile, it's around 18 to 22. So you're right. We are in that category. We have 10 National Academy members, but we have an opportunity to recruit, but also nominating our outstanding faculty members for that distinction.
And everybody can do that math. Any questions? Okay, hearing no questions, the reason I backed these up next to each other for a presentation is because a lot of that money is going to come from MU Health. It has to be successful. So Jonathan Kurtwright will present the MU Healthcare report.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Curator Steelman. It is my pleasure to give a chance to give an update on what is happening at MU Healthcare right now. My remarks today, I'm going to be making a few comments about our facilities, our financial performance, a few brief comments on quality and safety, and then a note of thanks. So with that, the next slide, please. If you think about it, Dr. Barron, who's doing an excellent job of leading both the academic and clinical portion of MU Healthcare and MU Health for University of Missouri, we number one priority, obviously, is next gen. But we must have the scale and the resources necessary to provide the jet fuel to make major investments in our academic programs at MU Healthcare. And one of the best examples that we have of this, of getting scale, is our Children's Hospital. This is going to be a $232 million project that was approved at the last board meeting. And on behalf of the MU Healthcare leadership team, I wanted to personally say thank you to the board. This is an incredible investment that the University of Missouri is making in MU Healthcare and in our building capacity and our chassis. And we take this very seriously. It is something that is, we don't take it for granted that it's happening at this particular moment. So a few comments about our new hospital. Once again, this is our rendering of where it's going to be. It's going to be located just to the east of our existing patient care tower, and it'll be a stone's throw away from NextGen. This is the view of where it would be from the rooftop of NextGen. Next slide. I show you this timeline because this is an incredibly light speed sort of timeline. We have done the planning and gotten approval, the discovery phase of this right now. We're going to be breaking ground in some portions of this in the next month. And then there will be a formal groundbreaking that all the board will be available to, and we would invite you to, in the spring of this year. And then over the next 3 years, we will be going through significant building on our facility, and we will be seeing our first patients in the new Children's Hospital in the summer of 2024. This is great speed, and we must move very quickly to ensure that we have the resources necessary to grow our clinical programs as well as our academic programs. Next slide, please. But whenever you have a facility project, it's an opportunity to build culture. It becomes our collective building. And so every time I round in our various facilities, I always remind people, especially our nursing staff and our surgeons and our team at Women's and Children's Hospital, you will have a major voice in what this new facility is going to look like. So in light of that, we have 40 plus project teams that are out there. There's 300 plus people that are involved in this project. And it's a way to build culture and excellence about where we're going for the future. And this has been an excellent way that we're building our culture at MU Healthcare. Next slide, please. Another example of some of our facilities that I wanted to remind the board of is if you think about it, we have a strategy for a consolidated inpatient chassis at our main University Hospital campus. We have an incredible outpatient facility on the South Providence part of town, and we have room to grow there over time. But one of the other strategies that we have, if you think about it, is primary care is truly one of the sources of excellence and one of our main points of differentiation from our competitors. And so it has been our strategy over time, and this is an example of what the board has done. 2 years ago, you approved $13 million for a new primary care clinic based in the northeast side of town. Well, just in those last 45 days, we had the groundbreaking for the grand opening for our Battle Clinic, primary care, family medicine, OBGYN, behavioral health, imaging services, lab services, and imaging services are all based right here and is right next to the Battle High School. This is an excellent service in the northeast part of town, and another example of where the Curators and the University of Missouri and MU Healthcare are working together to provide care to all parts of our community. Next slide. In terms of our finances, the first 6 months of the year have been very strong. On top line there, in terms of our operating margin, year to date, we're at through the December, we're at nearly a 10% margin on a forecast of 6%. And compared to our Moody's A rating benchmark that's out there, our margin, our return on our assets, our liquidity, our ability to cover our debt is all very, very strong. I would add one thing at the very bottom that to highlight is the net days revenue and accounts receivable. Under the able leadership of CFO Kay Davis and our new leader of our revenue cycle, Teresa Brooks, we have been able to significantly improve our cash position and to decrease our net days revenue and accounts receivable. This is a significant accomplishment and a major part of our financial performance year to date. Next slide. In terms of pure dollars, our net revenues for the first half of the year are well over $600 million. Our operating income is right over $60 million for the first 6 months of the year on a budget of 42. So we've had a good solid first half of the year. Now we must continue to perform. As Curator Steelman alludes to, we take this very seriously, and this is one of the ways that we can ensure that the University of Missouri has the necessary resources to have outstanding clinical research and educational programs that are the envy nationally. So our financial performance remains very, very strong. Thank you. Next slide. I wanted to highlight one other thing that's out here. Dr. Steve Witt, for those of you that know Dr. Witt is our Chief Clinical Officer. Dr. Witt is also serves on the Governor's Task Force for COVID response. He also serves on the SEC Leadership Council for the COVID response. Another one of aspects of Dr. Witt's leadership is he has been in charge of quality and safety. And under his leadership, we have moved from 45th to 23rd in this last year. Furthermore, our 4-star ranking for patient satisfaction, this is the highest satisfaction ranking we've ever had. And we just found out in the last 2 weeks that our CMS stars rating has gone to a 3-star ranking. And this is looking back over a 4-year period. And we believe that our best performance is ahead of us in these rankings. So it is our belief that ranking will continue to improve over time. Furthermore, Dr. Witt created tiered huddles every single day. We get together and talk about how we can improve and the items that were out there for the day and what's planned for the upcoming week. And we all now have, I would argue, some of the best, if not the best, data analytics that are out there moving forward. So Dr. Witt, though, recognized that he needed some help, and he needed to be able to delegate some of his incredibly important responsibilities. And we were able to recruit Dr. Robert Bob Pendleton to join us as our Chief Quality Officer. Dr. Pendleton hails from the University of Utah. And the University of Utah, to me, is a truly one of the organizations that we can aspire to. It provides excellence in both research and education, and does it in terms of an outstanding clinical enterprise. Their Vizient ranking this last year under his leadership as the Chief Quality Officer was #1. And we are honored to have Dr. Pendleton join us as our new Chief Quality Officer. I was reminded by Dr. Pendleton that he is a 5th-generation Missourian. So we loaned him to the University of Utah for the last 23 years, but now he has come home, and he is delighted to be joining our team. My final remark I would like to make is a note of thanks and admiration to Curator Marcy Graham. Curator Graham has served as our Health Affairs Committee Chair for the last 2 years. It has truly been my honor and privilege to consider him a friend, a colleague, and a mentor. And he has been such an incredible leader on our behalf. And Marcy, thank you for everything that you've done on the behalf of MU Healthcare, the School of Medicine. It has truly been my privilege to work with you. Thank you very much, Curator Graham.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. It's been an honor for me to serve in that capacity and to work with all of your great leadership.
Thank you very much.
By the way, there's nothing easier than following, or harder in some ways, than following Marcy Graham. He gets everything teed up for you so you don't have any work, but you always end up disappointing. I followed him as chairman and now as health committee chairman, so bear with me. But anyway, Marcy, again, thanks for everything. Any questions of either Rick or Jonathan?
Yes, as Curator Holbrook, I have a question. I need to make sure I understand things properly. When you show a $64 million net operating revenue, I understand, so help me here, that it's not really $64 million, because we still have to take out of that number some other what I would consider costs that in the way hospitals look at things, it's not but we still have to take out of that your debt service and a couple other things. That's not a true $64 million that's available. It's a number substantially less than that. Can you help me out on that? And what my understanding here?
No, it is our net operating income, and Kay or Ryan, additional thoughts from your perspective on this. Our days cash on hand is at 206 days. That includes our bottom line as well. Is there additional thoughts you have on this question? I mean, I'm happy to speak with you offline if that would also be helpful, Curator.
Jonathan, you're right. And it includes the interest, and then there's also some debt payments from a cash standpoint. There's some money for capital spending. You then take out the amount of gain share that the hospital provides to the School of Medicine that supports research both within the school and to Dr. Barron's point, to more broadly. I think the easiest way I think of it is that number of net operating income is, from a personal standpoint, kind of the money you have available to you before you pay your mortgages, put money away for retirement, and pay your taxes.
Yeah, in my world, I'd call that EBITDA. And I understand that really doesn't. It's not money I really do have available. The number I really do have available is somewhat less than that, because I still have these other expenses I still have to deal with. So going back to David's position of financing research, through the hospital and with the hospital, in conjunction with the hospital and the med school, I don't really have $64 million I can invest in research. It's a number substantially less than that. And that's kind of my dirty understanding. You and I have had this conversation a little bit, Ryan, and as finance chairman, I need a better explanation of all that interrelationship. But the point I'm trying to make here is I don't want somebody to walk out of here and say, oh my gosh, we have $64 million. We can do all this stuff with it. Yes, they're profitable, and Jonathan's doing a fabulous job, and I want to commend him on that. I'm just trying to point out that the number, I don't want to say is a little deceiving, but it's the 64 million is not readily available to spend, so to speak.
Curator Hobrock, I would also add that this is a business, and we need to have the liquidity and the balance sheet strength for MU Healthcare to ensure that we can continue to make major investments in our clinical enterprise as well. So
I concur with you completely.
I agree with you, and in the future, if it would be helpful, we'd be happy to add EBITDA as well on this. That is a very strong suggestion. Thanks.
Craig, any more, or anybody else? Any other questions? You're going back to my boring presentations, but they're quicker. Under Marcy's leadership, the Health Committee started receiving a quality and safety report. And frankly, there were some things that triggered this and some concern by the board. However, if we talk about anything else, the success that they've done on this is amazing. Under Dr. Whitt's leadership, they have improved from a 1-star to a 3-star CMS rating. That's amazing. The hire of Dr. Pendleton is remarkable. There's always a tension between clinical services and research. If there's any public university in the country that has cracked that, and that it's University of Utah, which has outstanding clinical services, as you've been told, and has recently been admitted to the AAU because of an astronomical growth in research expenditures. So Dr. Pendleton is going to be a very, very valuable addition to the team, and congratulations for his hire. Right now, quality and safety performance is extremely strong, with both patient survival and patient safety significantly better than what would be expected on average from institutions like ours, a better than average result based on severity of illness. Any questions there on quality control? Okay, because I couldn't answer them anyway. In your written materials, there's the finance report of MU Health's Chief Financial Officer, Kate Davis. There's a planning written report that's in there. There is a compliance report that is in there. Any questions for the Health Cares Committee? Okay, Mr. Chairman, I apologize for the length of this, but finally I am concluding the business of the healthcare.
Okay, thank you, Curator Stillman. We really appreciate that information. Do we have a minutes approval there, David, as an action item? I just want to make sure.
I do. I move approval of the minutes of the November 12 meeting.
I second.
Actually, Curator Chapman, the committee only has to approve those minutes, and they took care of that at their meeting last week.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we don't have all of the members present unless we have a health committee meeting, Daryl.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Curator Stillman. Well, that concludes the committee business for today. I would like to now take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back here. We'll meet back here and hear from President Choi and Provost Ramchan, followed by a strategic discussion regarding advancing research. So it's 11:42 on my clock right now. How about we get back here at 11:55? All right, we'll see you then, 11:55.